And our transcript is on.
Okay, I make a motion to open the meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, roll call. Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Stetser,
That's her eye.
trustee Lightgib,
Lightgib, aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay, I ask any of the board members this evening if they have any conflict of interest or anything they would like to disclose regarding the agenda items before us.
Lampier, I do not.
Trustee Lightgib, I do not.
That's her, I do not.
And Plummer, I do not. I ask that the clerk reads the guidelines for the meeting.
Oh, boy. Our guidelines are in flux, so I'm simply going to say that let's treat everybody with courtesy. If you have comments for the board, please put them in the Q&A. I will not be responding to chat comments, so please put all your postings in the Q&A. Also, if you wish to address the board, you can always raise your hand and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. Department reports. I just will say we did speak with the village attorney. He will be joining us later. His report is that he is working on our response regarding the clear cutting, our response to the Canal Corporation. So that really was just to let us know that that's what he's been doing. And let's see, we'll go right into the treasurer's report, please.
And it looks like Brooklyn is here. Brooklyn?
Oh, hi, Brooklyn.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Oh, we
Good
can't
evening.
hear you. You're very closer to the microphone, maybe. Hello?
Brooklyn, do we have you?
Is that any better?
It's about
Not
the
really.
same.
It's a little faint. Sounds like you're in the other
Sorry
room.
about that. I'm on,
Far away.
yeah, I'm on some pretty choppy Wi-Fi right now, so I'll try to speak in as loud as clear as possible. We do have our pretty standard voucher. Mary was kind enough to prepare this for us as I was at NICOM, but I did review it. Everything seems to be in standing order. Are there any questions regarding the vouchers?
Nope, I reviewed them on Friday. They all look good. I think Mary took out a couple of the questions I had while we waited for approval on the HPB and PZBA pieces of the attorney bills.
Okay, is there a motion to, oh, yes, Lily?
I would add that I did contact Susan Loda regarding the 75 Monroe PCBA piece, and I have not yet received a response, so we might not be able to approve that one this evening. That is the invoice for 576, I think it is.
Isn't that, didn't she take them out for tonight? Brooklyn might know.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
I believe so. 204, which was withdrawn. So we do have
Okay.
that one set aside.
Okay, thank you.
So is
Okay.
there a motion to approve the vouchers as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
trustee Stetser,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, aye.
motion passes.
Okay, what else, Brooklyn?
That is it, unless anyone has anything for me.
Anything for Brooklyn?
No,
Brooklyn, maybe you could just give us a few comments about your experience at NICOM while we have you.
Yeah, sure. Actually, so start by saying thank you to the board because you guys are the ones who made it able for us to all attend. But NICOM was definitely a great experience, not just along with the networking, but the classes that we took on the daily. It's great to have a wide variety. So I wasn't just in classes that were kind of geared toward clerks or anything. Most of my classes were finance based. So a lot of what Mary has been teaching me, she'll say it to me once, but to hear it from a different voice, that really helps. So I don't doubt Mary's teaching to be wrong, but to kind of have somebody else drill in the same instructions that she does, it was refreshing and helpful to know that Mary's definitely guiding me on the right track. She's has so much experience in doing it. She sounds just like a lot of the auditors and the instructors. Just not so much alone as just the verbiage, but some of the little underneath sayings that they say. We'll keep them between us finance people, but some of the little trips and tips and tricks that they taught were very, very useful.
Great, great. Well, I'm glad. It was a great experience. I agree. Well, thank you then. Next up, village clerk report.
I really don't have much for the board. Obviously, the board is aware of the notice I sent out today as the village office is closed to the public temporarily. We are sifting through our possible exposure to COVID. We have tested a couple employees, which would be myself and the mayor, and we came back negative, which is awesome. I will update the board as we go along. I'm hoping we can reopen safely by Friday at the worst case scenario. But again, we wanted to be safe and, didn't want to expand the exposure any more than it had happened. So we're working through that right now. In addition, I also would like to thank the board for NICOM. It's always a great experience. The networking is irreplaceable. The learning, again, always changes. There's always new rules and things that come down and somehow you miss them. So it's always good to have that reinforcement to go back and look back and go, wow, when did you do that? Okay. So as we move forward, there are always changes and things coming from that. I also would like to alert the board that I will be going on vacation. My anticipation, I'll be gone from Monday, I believe it's the 4th to the 21st. I'll be back on October 21st. So if things go as planned, again, looking at our exposure situation here with COVID, I should be gone for that time frame. Marina will be helping hold down the fort. So I'd say give her a little patience and she'll be preparing your next packet. And if anything pops up, we'll work it out after I get back. Okay.
Great. A well-deserved vacation too.
Looking
Okay.
forward to it.
Yeah. Minutes? Any?
Mayor
Oh, yeah. Renee.
Plummer, I think Dan is trying to call in.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
He
Let's
said
see.
to promote him on.
I see him.
Okay.
Oh, great. Let's wait for a second and get him in here.
he should have got the invite. Let me make sure. There he is.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Dan. How you
Sorry,
doing?
Mike.
Dan,
Hi, Dan. Okay.
We were just talking about minutes, just because
Oh.
we're,
Yeah,
Real
I've been on the
quick.
call for a while.
oh, okay.
Sorry, missed you over there. Just an update. We are editing minutes from the previous. We were up to date as the last meeting, but we want to make sure what you get is accurate. So they should be coming out by the next meeting. We are working through. It's just the time frame with us being away to get the final edits done. So you will have them soon.
Also, the previous meeting was 5 hours long, so I'd imagine that it would take some
Yeah,
time.
that's a little painful to go back through, but we are working through it and we will have something for you soon.
Okay, thank you. On to meeting items, non-municipal use permit. The first up is the Pittsford Crew with Pull the Plug Regatta.
Correct. This is a normal application we receive every year. They're typically not here to make their presentation, and I usually do it for them. I'm just double checking to make sure. I don't see anybody. So this is I believe, their last regatta of the year, and it's usually conducted about this time of year. So I included their letter as well as their non-municipal use application that they filled out. Any questions or concerns?
I'm excited they're having it. I think it's great.
Anything different? I didn't compare it to prior ones. Anything different?
Nope, same
Nope.
as always.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion to approve the Pittsford Crew municipal use permit.
I'll
I'm
second.
gonna ask also you include a 45-day waiver
Yeah.
just in case
Yeah.
they're
Oh.
short.
Just gonna say that, yeah.
Great.
Second the amended motion.
Okay. Trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
trustee Lampier,
Aye.
trustee Stetser,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, I.
motion passes.
Okay, next up, we have the Chamber of Commerce with candlelight night.
Great. We do have a representative here. I'm going to promote them up so they can speak. Okay, Lisa, you should be live and be able to speak to the board.
Lisa Schwingel or Lisa Formicola?
Hi, how are you?
Good. So is Lisa Formicola or Ann on?
Oh, I see Ann. I'm going to promote her up.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
hi, Ann.
Hi, everyone.
And I don't see Lisa Formicola.
Yeah. Let's see there.
Okay, you guys are good to go.
So do you have a copy of the comprehensive plan for closing of South Main? Good. So honestly, you'll see down in red that we switched over to the police controlling the traffic at the State Street. And that worked really well in 2019. It seems so long ago since we had this. But we're going to follow everything that's on this plan. It worked really well in 2019. So we're asking for the board to approve it this year, and fingers crossed that we'll be able to do it. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions here? Wow.
No.
Smooth sailing.
Yeah, it went really great in 2019.
Yeah, yeah, no, and it's just such a fun night too. So.
Yeah.
Okay, I will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Lampier.
Second, Keating.
Okay, roll call. Trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
trustee Stetser. Trustee Stetser, you're muted.
I muted it and then unmuted it. I said aye.
Trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, I.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Ann and Lisa, before you go, I know Dorothea is actively involved in the
Yes.
planning meetings. Is there anything you need from us to help make this a more successful event?
Dorothea and Zach are always so great to work with and help us, make it a success. So we're really feel very happy and thankful for all your help. Sorry, I have laryngitis, so I'm a little scratchy here. But Dorothea is a great asset to us, and so is Zach.
Great.
Okay, well, if you think of anything, let us know.
I will, Dan.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Have a great
All right,
evening.
Dan.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, special permit application with Ronald Durency for the Buku food truck.
Okay, let me promote him to speak.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Justin.
Well, perhaps we're going to say the same thing. I don't think this is actually a special permit application based on a previous email with that I had with Mr. Loth. And so I just wanted to see if there are any updates on that.
Yeah, we had a similar discussion. Steve, did you want to speak to that?
Steve, you're muted.
Steve, you're muted. You're muted. There you go. Nope. Now you're muted again. There.
All right, good.
Yep,
Yep.
we're good.
All right. I got muting and muting and unmuting. No, Justin actually alerted me today. I actually didn't realize that he put in a special permit instead of a short-term retail permit. So I'm not so sure this is I don't believe this is viable for what he's trying to do, because what he wants to do is have his food truck down at 50 State Street, down next to one of the buildings there, for the hours that he put on this application. But like I said, I don't think this is the right venue. I think as in Charlie Clotten or as in the Christmas tree sales, I think the short-term retail is the proper venue for this.
Yes, Dorothea.
I did speak to Jeff on this when this came to our attention, and Jeff indicated the board could move this to public hearing based on Mr. Jernsey filling out the proper application to reflect, because I believe the information would be the same. It's just the wrong piece of paper with the wrong title, if that helps the board.
Oh, yes, Lily, yes.
Thank you. I have an additional question, probably also for Jeff, and that is, I believe the board approved Mr. Geronese for a temporary use permit on Main Street, 10 South Main, North Main Street, across from Village Hall, Dr. Tillis's lot. I thought that we had approved that. So would there be something that we would have to also add to that, given that he already holds one temporary use permit from us?
Thanks, Lily. Steve?
Yeah, no, Lily, we did, but with the caveat of the town also having to approve, and he did not get approval from the town.
I see.
So
Okay,
that-
thank you.
That technique was never fulfilled.
Okay, I see. I see. Yes, so then I would make a motion that we would move this application to public hearing with the understanding that the proper application form will be filled out.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I just had a
Yes,
one.
oh, yes, Justin.
Sorry. I think the piece of information that's missing, if this is moved to a short-term retail application, is the dates of operation. Since that would, by definition, be a part of the short-term use. So subject to that being there, I support it being moved to a different type of application.
Okay, so there was a motion. I seconded the motion. Just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Yes, I understand that. We do have someone who wishes to speak. Does the board want to entertain those comments?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. Limbeck, you're allowed to talk.
Good evening, John Limbeck, 62 State Street. I can't begin to tell you folks how much I object to this. We've got yet another scheme by Mr. Fox to put something back there that this place was never intended for. This is going to be next to that massage place, so it's going to be right in my backyard. You're going to have traffic there 6 days a week until after 10 o'clock p.m. You're going to have cleaning and dumping trash after 10 o'clock. I don't know what he talks about disposing of gray water appropriately. I can see that going right in the RG&E right-of-way behind where he's going to be set up. You've got conflict with the restaurants that are already there. Right now, I'm going to go back to a landlord there who has no site plan. And once again, he's changed the striping in that area and there's no site plan. He changed the striping around his copper leaf. What's going to happen with lighting? You don't have a lot of lighting back there right now because they don't have it on after dusk, so it's not lighting up our backyards. I don't know how you can even consider this. There's potential odors from that truck. You're going to have trash blowing around. You're going to have all this traffic, supposedly. If you've got kids there, if you've got people outside eating, how do you figure that this fits in somebody's backyard appropriately? That's my comment. Thank you.
Thanks, John. And that's why we also have a public hearing. So, the public can weigh in. That's the point of that. But yes, Dorothea. Oh, you're
I
muted.
have another comment for the board.
Okay.
Mr. Ferris, he commented that I thought at the last meeting, the board said it could not set a public hearing for a matter for which there is not a complete application. Is this making it an exception for some reason? I'll leave that to the board.
Well, I think it's at the board's discretion and we have the information. It's just on the wrong form. And the motion was made with the understanding, and actually it's conditional, that proper application would be filled out essentially with the same information. Yes, Justin.
Unfortunately, as I was saying before, I disagree that we have adequate information. The key piece of it being a short-term retail application would be the dates of operation. Otherwise, it may not be short-term. So I don't, I think we're missing a very key piece of information to be considered as a different application type.
Yes.
Can we
Steve?
let Mr.
Excuse me one
Guernsey
sec.
talk?
Yeah, just 1 second. Steve has his hand up. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron's hand's up too.
Yeah.
Steve, did you want to just add anything quickly before Ron?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that question could be asked and answered real quick. Ron is on here.
Oh, yeah, that's where we're going. Okay, yes. Hi, Ron.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Great. Yeah, on the application, we put if we get approved October 12th, we would start October 15th and we would run for 9 months. And that would probably include 2 or 3 months we'd have to shut down through the coldest part of the winter. We will stay open as long as we can. Also, the hours of operation, there's not going to be anybody there 10 o'clock at night. We're not going to serve anything past 9, probably much earlier than that. I don't think Mr. Limbick can hear or see us or smell us from where we are. And I just want to make this place a better village, and I would appreciate it if y'all worked with us. And I thank you for your efforts.
So when it says under provide a description of the activity that is planned, it says arrive on site 9, so 9 a.m.
9 a.m. Yes.
Okay. It's always helpful to have AMs and PMs
Sure.
on these applications, just for, clarity.
I thought I had it on there.
Yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? There's a motion before us. Oh, yes, Lily. Yes.
I think before we need to get from Dorothea the potential date for the public
That's
hearing.
true.
So that
Good
could be
point.
part of the motion.
That would
That is-
be October 26th at 7 p.m.
Thank you. I will
Yep.
make that part of my motion.
Okay, we have, yes, Dan.
I just want to know what additional material we're asking Ron and his team to bring to that meeting. I want to make sure we're really clear because I don't want to see us have to schedule another one. It takes so long. So can we be articulate about that, of what we need him to provide?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, Dan, I'll make sure that with the retail application is properly filled out with everything necessary for that permit.
Okay, and we don't need a site plan review?
I should not, no.
Okay.
Oh, yes, Dorothea.
Mr. Limbeck requests to speak again.
He's already commented. Will the board entertain him speaking again? Or should we move on with the motion?
It's fine with me. That's my
Mhm.
opinion.
Okay.
Okay, we're good to let him speak. Okay. Mr. Limbeck, you're allowed to speak.
I just wanted to address the applicant's comments that he's not going to be serving anything after 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock is still awfully late to have something like this set up in your backyard. And he can think all he wants that we're not going to see any or smell any odors off of the truck. We're not going to hear anything. We're not going to see anything. But let's face it, you're going to have all of those things. And who's going to be there to watch it at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night? That's what I'd like to understand.
But does this mean he has to redo his application?
Yes, he does.
So the application has to be rewritten.
All right, I still am incredulous that you're considering this.
What we're doing is we're moving it to a public hearing to further, to take further public comment.
What
That's
the
what we're
board
doing
should
right
say
now.
is that
And
it's
there's a-
inappropriate for this neighborhood and not move it forward.
Appreciate that,
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure we'll see you all, hear you also at the public hearing. And I think that's, we respect your comments. Thank you.
I'm done with these fucking people.
Okay, we have a motion before us and a second.
Okay, ready for roll call? Trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
trustee Lightgib,
Like Eb, no, we're still missing information for the application.
trustee Stetser,
That's all right.
trustee Lampier,
Lampier, aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, I.
motion passes.
Okay, all right, well, Steve will make sure everything's put together on the application.
Ron, a standard disclaimer is that's the soonest we can do it by law. We would love to, weigh in on these things before, but that's the quickest we can do it. We have no choice on that.
I understand.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up, we are delighted to have the director of the Seneca Park Zoo Society with us tonight. He's going to be giving us a bit of an update on the activities. Mr. Tom Snyder should be here.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, hi, how are
Great.
you?
Good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you all having me. And I'm not the full director of the zoo, but I'm director of programming and conservation action for the Zoo Society. And for some background for you, if you're not aware, we are the nonprofit partner to Monroe County Seneca Park Zoo. So we partner with the county. My job is director of programming and conservation action is really about the outreach programs, the on-site programs that we have, Zoomobile, Butterfly Beltway, things like that. One of the ways that we have funded some of our outreach programs in the past is through the PRISM program, which is a partnership for regional invasive species management that's ran out of Geneva. And we're a sub-awardee with that. So I don't know, maybe this spring, I guess it was, and Mayor Plummer got a hold of us through a mutual friend to speak about some pollinators and some different gardens and invasive species problems that you all have on some of your properties. So we came down, took a tour of the trail and Arboretum, and I believe it was the last week of July. And I apologize for not having all of the details. Dave Will, who's an employee of mine, basically ran this program. He had a death in the family today, so he couldn't come tonight. But he did give me, so he did give me his notes. What we do is as a sub-awardee through PRISM, we go out and do outreach programs and mitigation and identification for invasive species. So we canvass the area again. I believe it was the end of July, last week of July. Basically, what we came up with is there's mainly 6 different species of invasives that are on that property. I do have some slides. I'd be happy to send these images to you afterwards so you can see those and put those in the notes if you want to. But basically out of that property, about 40 to 50% of it is covered with some invasives that tends to go along the same path that we generally see, which is where the public is. They're transference and vectors for that type of thing. So we found mugwort, Japanese knotweed, tree of heaven, black swallowwort, purple loosestrife, and multiflora rose. Again, with the type of soil, the amount of sun that this area was getting, that's pretty standard fare that we see through Monroe County. So not so dissimilar of things that we find, but we are happy to come in again. I know that we're just discussing what we're going to do over the next couple months about some of the area that was the prior dump area to shore up some of that land, outcompete some of the invasives that are there with some natives. And yeah, that's where we're at right now. Do you all have specific questions for me? I apologize. I thought I was going to be able to share screen, but so I could show you the property, but if I can, I will. If not, then I'll.
Yeah, I'll be happy to allow you to
Okay.
share your screen.
Okay, then I'll show you this one slide.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Dan has a.
So
question.
real quick, just a disclosure, I know Tom from this is Tom Snyder, yeah?
It is.
Okay.
I thought I recognized you.
Yeah, I know him from a different world. We have no business relationship. I didn't see his name on the agenda tonight, or I would have claimed him. But there's no financial ties between us. I just know him from the world. So just
Okay.
wanted to be fully transparent about
Okay,
that. We
thank you.
work together at the Simon School sometimes.
Tom, I was thinking maybe you could talk a little bit about the IMAP Invasives program, the app.
Sure. Yeah. So as part of the PRISM program, Dorothy, if you can enable screen sharing for me,
I think I made you a panelist so you could
It
share.
says it's disabled, but
Oh, No. Okay, I'll work on that.
Yeah,
I'll give
so
it a
great.
shot.
Thank you for the cue. With Prism and through Hobart, one of the main clearinghouses for invasive species information is through IMAP Invasives, which is a citizen science-based website. So we do things like provide public training sessions on those, so you can go out and actually map where invasives are. It is a little bit, you do need to train on it. It's not so easy as just like, you know, clicking where you are and going from there. But if you're interested in really kind of understanding the full breadth, that gets shared with DEC, with EPA, with all of those organizations. So then you can put out prioritized task forces to go after things, mainly like when hogweed is found or something that could be a major public concern. That's the way that it really gets rolled up quite
Could
quickly.
you talk about hogweed? I don't know if everybody's familiar with hogweed and the concern
Oh,
about.
I'll get the terminology wrong for it for sure, but it essentially burns your skin.
It's
And
really deadly. It's terrible.
Incredibly terrible thing to go through and to see the images. Unfortunately, there's times where it's on private land and people don't want anybody to come in to mitigate, which is the biggest problem right now with that. But if you see something that looks like Queen Anne's lace, but it's about 7 feet tall, stay away and report it for sure. You all can see the screen, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so this is how we report it back to IMAP Invasives, and this is actually the screenshot from there. So you can see the yellow area is the area that we actually went through and hiked. The red area is the affected areas, and I do have some narratives here that tell which one's which is, you know, not we don't really need to go through that now. But basically what we found is this area gets a lot of sunlight. So with secondary growth, if you have the sunlight and you have even decent soil, you know, you're going to get invasive. So this is really the area that we want to mitigate for, and ideally plant some native grasses because they can have upwards of 25 feet root systems, and that really grabs in. It stops erosion. You know, if you see some of that land, there's erosion because that was a dump with you know, kind of soil just put over top of it. So there's erosion problems with
And
that.
that's also, sorry to interrupt, but that's also where we planted the ryegrass.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And so again, that's, you know, from this point, it becomes a mitigation, how you'd like to mitigate and what you'd like to do with that property. So we're happy to continue those discussions with you and see what we can do. We do have some more outreach money available that we can continue to do the same type of program, and would be happy to do that through the village if there's some other areas as well.
That's great.
And of course, if there's any type of public day where we can come and help with that, that's we're always keen on doing that and helping spread the word.
That's great. We're planning on it.
Great.
Definitely. There was something else I wanted to ask you. It was, well, the IMAP Invasives program, just getting back to that, that's a national program. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's one of those kind of convoluted national programs where states take initiatives on their own, but it's a nationwide program. So it doesn't always talk well with each other, but yeah, I mean, it's a pretty accepted national standard. The other one that I would say that's probably a little bit easier entry level for people, for anybody listening, is iNaturalist. And iNaturalist is a great, easy way to just take a photo and it grabs the metadata from that photo. The other thing is, for any of you that are walking the trail and want to see some of this and understand what it is, there's actually an app that's called Picture This that uses AI technology to look at the leaf and flower structure and give you an ID, and that, in my experience, has been really great. So between those three, you can really report those back. And of course, anytime you find any of this stuff, DEC is interested. So, you know, they're interested in that as well, and they pay attention to IMAP invasives.
Yeah, and one thing that was surprising to me, just speaking to invasives, is that Monroe County is pretty high on the list.
Yeah, I think we were talking that day, and it's perennially we're first or second in the state in invasives. We're, I think, second or third-ish around there on pesticide use, and we're first in deer population per capita as well.
Wow.
A lot of that is transportation, right? So Erie Canal and some of those things that really come in together with the Genesee and the roads, but it's definitely, yeah, it's job security for us for sure.
Yes, Lily.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. That was so informative, and I'm really looking forward to being able to walk through with either you or your employee who was unable to join us this evening, and also with Mr. Engels, who did some planting in there in March. And we had discussed as a board the possibility, and we also, I thought, had set a date at one time for the board to have a meeting at the Arboretum and a walkthrough. And I think from my standpoint, it would be wonderfully informative to have your organization as well as some arborists with us and give us as much information as we can possibly receive so that we can make informed decisions going forward. So I'm hoping that the board this evening is receptive to setting a date before it begins to snow for us to walk through and have this long delayed walk and discussion through the Arboretum. So I hope that the board will consider that this evening.
Thanks so much, Lily. Just really quickly, I think Dorothea on several occasions did send out, and Dorothea, maybe you can chime in, requesting information back from trustees about dates that would work for that. And I don't think anything came together effectively. Am I correct, Dorothea?
Yes, you are. I did send out, I think there was 2 different dates, and we never did get a quorum or everybody together in agreement. So
we can try again.
We can definitely try again.
We're definitely interested in doing that and would be happy to do it and
That's
bring
great.
whoever we can help as well.
That's wonderful. That's great. Well, let's give it the old try again, and let's see if we can get some dates and get everybody together. That sounds wonderful.
I'll get an email out to the board.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for all your good work. And oh, yes, Justin. Yeah.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions too. Thank you very much, Tom.
Sure.
I appreciate you coming out. And did you say, so I tried to look at the IMAP invasive site and I didn't see the Arboretum. I didn't see anything in the villages. Was I looking in the wrong place perhaps, or?
No, there's a lag with it and it goes through an approval process. The idea is to have very highly qualified data. And so we are going through that process. To be honest with you, we tend to verify our data first, and that happens kind of end of season, which just started. So you were actually the first ones to go up, and I'd imagine probably in the next month or so it'll go up.
Great, that's very helpful. Thank you. And I was wondering as well, as you were in the Arboretum, I don't know if you were doing this or if your associate was doing this, and I'm certainly sorry to hear about his loss. Was there any, were there any hazards in terms of the terrain that were mentioned or anything else related to, more to the site itself rather than the invasive plants?
I think that probably the only part that I saw, and I really can only speak to myself here because we didn't have that discussion, so I apologize for that. But I think that for me, it looked like erosion could in one of the higher areas was probably your largest, worry, I would say, in as far as a site. I think that, if you look at kind of accessibility and things like that, I think you're right where you need to be with that. But I think that, the problem could come in some of that raised area. And that can be mitigated as well, as we do a walkthrough and have multiple people there. I'm sure we'll all come say, yes, do this, and 5 or 6 people saying that. And really the native grasses are the way to do that, and to do that inexpensively and naturally. We don't need to manhandle everything in land. We can just, do the proper environment and let the right things flourish.
Sure. Thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense. As far as, so I think that when we were talking with Mr. Wills earlier in the summer, we were talking about Seneca Park Zoo possibly helping out with weeding and mulching. And I know that you're tied up and that funds are short and there's a lot to do. Do you happen to know, did we cross wires somewhere, or do you have any recollection of what happened with that initiative?
Well, I think Mayor Plummer was just sending an email a couple days ago about that. I do recall that the first, as you were just speaking, you didn't have a quorum the one time that we were going to do the walkthrough. So I think that started the delay with the end of season. And again, we're not too late to do that stuff. So we've still got time to do that. and happy to take part however we can with that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I didn't realize that that was a blocker, the quorum going to the site. I actually don't think that I received the initial emails. That was when I was coming out to the board, and I think that emails were getting sent to my old village email, but certainly looking forward to getting out there, and I appreciate your explanations.
And the other great, yeah, you're welcome, first off. And the other thing is in the spring, a lot of the invasive stuff you want to get before it flowers, which is definitely not September in New York for most things. So while we might have missed a certain window in the summer, it's not that much of a cost for us, because we can come in early spring and grab that stuff. Is the ideal time anyways.
Yeah, where do you see the celandine? It's everywhere. Great. Also, you actually had a really busy summer, I think, with a number of other projects as well with other municipalities. So it's not just us. I think you guys have been hopping.
Yeah, I will say that the native pollinator, for me preaching about it for the last 4 years, it seems to hit critical mass, which is great. And yeah, we do a lot of the land restoration with RIT. Brockport has come on. University of Rochester is doing a native planting at the president's house. Yeah, so I think that overall it's really great to see boards like you all get involved like this. Invasives and the plantings around the area, and accessibility to nature and environmental justice for everybody, and accessibility for everybody is a very important thing to all of us at the Zoo Society. So I applaud you all in trying to make that better.
Great. Well, thank you. Is there any other questions? Yes, Dorothea.
Okay, we did have a chat question, but I think this will be very easy to answer. Could the public please be advised of any future walkthroughs with outside experts? And obviously we will make that happen.
Yep, absolutely. Well, hey, thanks again. And please, tell Dave that the board sends, we send our condolences to him and his family. We're so sorry.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you very much. Appreciate it all. And we'll see you at the walkthrough, right?
You bet. Okay.
Great.
Thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Pittsford Ambulance, the 50th anniversary celebration.
Let's see here. Yeah, okay. Mr. Smith, you're allowed to speak.
Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. How is everyone tonight?
Great. How are you?
Excellent. Dorothy, would I be able to present my screen?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Give me a moment here. We're going to change your designation.
I understand that everyone was hoping for about an hour-long talk on the ambulance, right?
Always.
Excellent. And it won't be an hour long.
We do long meetings. I don't know if you know this about us.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Then I'm in the right spot. This is good.
Oh, we're just warming up.
Okay, you should be able to share.
Oh, I think he's muted.
Yep, I think it's switching him
There we
from.
go. Yeah,
Hey, there we go.
here we go.
I'll even start my video. I've got a face for radio though, so be warned. Give me just a moment here. I'm looking to share my screen.
Okay.
While we get started, I'll point out that this is 50 years here with Pittsford Ambulance, which we're pretty excited about. We had our open house just a couple weeks ago, a week ago this past Saturday. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Is this available for you to see currently?
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Perfect. So
Yes. Yeah.
50 years, just as a brief recap. So Pittsford Ambulance actually started in terms of discussion in 1970. And as you can see here, there was a young girl who was struck by a car. I know the village has been spending some time rather on an active transportation plan, specifically looking at pedestrian safety. So interestingly enough, that exact topic is part of the formation for our service here. And you know, we're in the Pittsford community pretty well aligned with the rest of the nation in terms of when our ambulance service started. most communities were evaluating the need for local service at about the same time. And really, EMS services started in the mid-60s as a result of a white paper focused specifically on preventable deaths on the highways. So again, very timely. Our first shift was September 11th, 1971. And nothing happened for the first day, which is a good thing. But then on the second day, we did take our first job for service. Pittsford Ambulance has been somewhat innovative, especially at the outset. Like most ambulance services, we had the traditional Cadillac ambulance, but then we recognized that in order to maintain a local focus, it was important for us to have locally based EMTs, and then we recognized the value of having paramedics on our service, but we coordinated with area towns, Penfield, Barrington, Fairport, East Rochester, and helped to form a separate service that provided those professional paramedics who supported the local ambulance. And then the organization has expanded over time. We're also pretty unique in that in the local area, we were one of the first organizations to diversify our staffing. If you think about the initiation of the ambulance service, we're very similar to the fire service in that most folks lived and worked in the same community. And so they volunteered in the communities where they lived and worked, and their employers would allow them to leave when the calls would come in. Same thing would happen with the ambulance as it would with the fire service. But on the fire side, often you'd see a ladies auxiliary. In the EMS service, we said, gee, these folks can contribute just the same as anyone else, and they certainly have the interest. So let's diversify the workforce. And so we've had good inclusion throughout our community since the early 1980s. In the mid-1990s here, mid-1980s here in Monroe County, the 911 system was established. Prior to that, here in Pittsford, folks who needed the ambulance would call 385-2400, and the ambulance dispatcher who was here on site, actually sitting in the same room where I'm at, would receive that phone call. They would call around to the volunteers, assemble a crew, and then the ambulance would respond. But with the 911 system, the need for that local dispatcher changed. Now there was the central point as we're used to today. So the shift, the focus of our organization shifted. Prior to that 911 system, there was always a dispatcher on site. And after that, the focus became more on establishing a local presence for the EMTs and paramedics. And then for almost 15 years, the ambulance service was essentially unchallenged. We were able to maintain that same local focus, the EMTs providing service to the local community, and the science for the practice of our medicine really maintained about the same until the early 2000s. We started to see a shift in not only demand, but also the expectation for the EMTs and paramedics. Expectations in terms of response time, clinical practice, and also our integration into the larger public safety and healthcare systems began to evolve. And so we saw a need to shift from a principally volunteer model to a combined model. And beginning in the early 2000s, we began to lease staff in order to meet the local demand. Excuse me. In 2011, the organization started hiring management, and in 2016, we became a combination service, so a blend of volunteers and paid EMTs. And then remember that independent paramedic service that we'd worked with since 1977, we merged that organization in with ours in order to expand our capability and provide paramedic level service to the citizens of the village and the town of Pittsford. That expansion in total has allowed us to cover the overwhelming majority of our calls, 97% of our calls on average, and then continue to provide service for the major events that happen throughout the town. So not only the base 911 requests that we receive on a regular basis, but also support the many events that happen throughout the entirety of the town and the village. So that's 2019, right? So it's 1971 through 2019, and then into 2020, the challenges have changed substantially. And as you look at the faces here, you'll notice that even in the midst of a pandemic, the folks still remain in good spirits and certainly well positioned to provide service throughout the community. And in 2020, the focus for healthcare in total, and especially for us on the EMS front, has changed substantially. Our call volumes initially dropped off significantly as the pandemic took hold. If you think about the changes in behavior throughout our communities, and then the change in terms of how the healthcare community was postured to address COVID principally, our volume diminished by almost 50% And so we took that time to realign our relationships and change our priorities. So throughout the course of the pandemic, our folks have continued to provide that traditional 911 service, but also are leaders in providing COVID testing, education, assisting in vaccines with vaccination clinics and going out into the community to vaccinate homebound patients. We continue to work with our partners in public health and public safety for community education. And we've also worked to improve the overall EMS system. So Pittsford is not the largest ambulance service here in the Monroe County area, but we certainly look to be an innovator and an influencer in terms of how the system develops. So these are a few of the pictures of activities that we've participated in throughout the COVID pandemic. Top left and bottom right are pictures from the Javits Center down in New York City, which was a field hospital developed specifically for COVID. Some of our folks, myself included, went down with representatives from the local health systems to view how that hospital was managed, and then help to plan for the county if a field hospital were required here in the Monroe County area. You can also see in the top right some of the folks who were involved in that homebound vaccination process. And then bottom left, this is our newest ambulance, but most important, you'll see that it's posted outside of a federal vaccine clinic. The state of New York has recognized that Pittsford Ambulance is an organization that can get the job done. And so as their contractor for that clinic vacated their obligation, we were able to fill in and help without changing any of our capability to provide, again, here for the local 911 need. So 50 years, and you can see there's a lot of evolution. Much of that is the evolution of our industry. Fire service and law enforcement here in the United States have centuries of established practice and development. But again, it's the mid-1960s when there's a formalization of the civilian EMS service here in the United States. And it's only since 1971 that we've been practicing here. So 50 years of evolution, and there's still quite a way for us to go. And there are significant challenges. The principal mechanism for funding for the ambulance service is reimbursement. And our formation, again, is based upon that white paper, which focuses on trauma care and specifically transport of folks to hospitals where they can receive definitive care. But the community need here in Pittsford, as it is in many other communities, is far more than just transport to the hospital, and certainly far more than just trauma. The significant predominance of our need is medical in nature, so cardiac, stroke, sepsis, et cetera, but also social needs that can't be met by other services or aren't currently. And we're uniquely prepared because in the EMS environment, we're the natural bridge between public health and public safety. So the challenge for us in the next 50 years really is shifting the way that we're capitated, because we know that the reimbursement we receive for transports does not match the true community need. And we have a great workforce that's well positioned and well prepared to meet that community need, but we need to shift the way that they're trained, the way that they're equipped, and then help them to understand what really they're facing. Because again, our training often focuses on things like trauma and cardiac and stroke. So adding in additional training to help us understand some of those social and societal needs and the ways that we can address behavioral health and also substance use disorders especially are going to be major focuses for us. And then beyond that, it's also, I think that the EMS community will benefit substantially by looking to reduce healthcare consumption, which seems somewhat counterintuitive. But if we can decrease the number of hospital readmissions by doing follow-up post-discharge, for example, those types of services are far less expensive than readmission to the hospitals. And again, we're uniquely positioned as that bridge between public health and public safety to go into the community and do follow-up care and service. So as I mentioned before, Pittsford Ambulance is not the largest ambulance service in Monroe County, but we've got a group of amazing folks here. We try as best possible to recruit top talent and retain folks who are thought leaders and innovators. So in doing that, we position ourselves to influence the way that not only the healthcare system or the availability of healthcare evolves here in the Pittsford community, but also throughout the entirety of Monroe County. And we think that's a benefit. So 50 years strong thus far, and looking forward to another 50 years that, frankly, at the end of which will be a very different environment for us and for the community that we serve. I'll certainly take any questions that you have. I probably can't answer anything on, like 19th century French politics, but anything EMS or healthcare related, anything related to the pandemic, I'm happy to address.
Wow, you're such an impressive organization. It's just incredible to hear the story of the growth and where you are today. I'm interested in the follow-up, options that you're talking about after, the patient leaves the hospital and all of that. I think that's really an interesting idea. Could you speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this sometimes is called community paramedicine or mobile integrated health. Again, the principal focus of the EMS system now, and this is not unique to New York State, but really throughout the United States, is that we respond to an emergency, we address the medical need and transport the person to the hospital. But the community need certainly extends well beyond that. Much like the fire service does fire prevention education, there's health education that we could be a part of. There's the opportunity for us to do treatments in a person's home that don't result in transport to the hospital. And then there's the follow-up service as well. And we run into a few barriers. First, those programs aren't capitated. We're paid based upon transports. And so there's an unmet expense when we take on those programs. Certainly a valuable need, and the total cost is far less than continued use of the hospital systems or even use of primary care in many cases. But there's no funding for that. And then we're met with opposition from other established groups. For example, the nursing unions often oppose these types of initiatives because they see that as taking away from their work. My recommendation, and I've done some work with this on both the state and the national level, these programs should not look to conflict or compete with existing services, but instead fill in existing gaps. So it's important for us to be a part of this type of activity right here, where we talk with our local and elected leadership to understand what the gaps are, what the needs are, and to hear from the community too, as to what types of services they don't have access to or that they need. Because again, being in the community, not only can we address some of the no needs, but I think we can break down barriers to access, which is also a significant issue in terms of health and then healthcare expense.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's a nursing shortage, and I would think, you really have identified something that is a gap that in fact what you would be doing would be supportive, and enhance that. So I see that as something really positive. Are there any other questions from the board or thoughts? Yes, Lily?
Thank you. Congratulations, Jonathan, on a wonderful presentation and also on 50 years of service to the community. You're such an invaluable resource to us, and we appreciate you and your organization so very, very much. And so many of us in the community have reached out to you in the past, and you have responded so well and so professionally, and also available. I'll put in a plug if anybody ever needs a wheelchair or crutches or walkers. They are your go-to resource, and we do appreciate you so much, and thank you so much for your presentation.
Of course, I appreciate the opportunity. I'd be happy to come to these more often if there's interest in talking about what the ambulance service does, or if it's valuable for us to weigh in on anything that's happening within the community.
That's great. No, appreciate it. We'll probably take you up on it. Yes, Dorothea.
Yes, we have a question from the public. I believe it was Christina Mule. Unfortunately, on the full screen, I can't see the hand raised. So I'm going to, Christine, you should be able to speak.
Can I go real quick? I just have a tiny little point to make.
Sure.
I just want to go a little farther than Lily's point and note that all those things that they talked about are free. The wheelchairs to borrow, the crutches to borrow, the walkers, that kind of stuff. So just wanted to make that clear.
Thanks, Dan. Christina? Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was going to say, to build on that point, we do offer that service to support other organizations. We're going to be supporting the Parkinson's Foundation in early October for one of their events. We'll be temporarily loaning some walkers and some wheelchairs for their event as well. So if you have a need, reach out. We're happy to help.
Thank you. And Dorothea, is Christina?
Yep. Christina, you can unmute yourself. You're free to speak or ask your question.
Could you unmute?
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah,
If she wants to, she'll raise her hand again. I'm trying. I think she disappeared. Oh, wait, I got questions in the Q&A.
Okay.
Oh, hand was raised in error. Sorry.
Okay.
No problem.
Jonathan, the last time I saw you was literally the day that you all got the call that everything was shutting down and your pagers and your everything was going off. The siren was going off when the emergency order came on. So it's nice to see your friendly face again.
Thank you. Yes, I remember distinctly. It was the beginning.
Yeah. So thank you for coming tonight.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Great. Also, any more questions or comments? Well, thanks so much again, and thanks so much for your service to our community. We're grateful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
You as well.
Okay, so moving. Oh, hi, Jeff. Okay, moving on. Just an update on the Gabions at 44 Rand Place. We've been working on a proposal. We just want to kind of give you folks an update. We'll probably have something to bring before the board. We're thinking by the next meeting. Scott Harder's been involved in looking at the engineering of that. And we also have been in touch with the two property owners, because it's actually not just one, that are involved, working on easements and making sure we're getting things kind of lined up. So we just wanted to let the board know we're moving things along. Yeah, Dan.
And similar progress on the same issue at Boughton and South? Or is that on a different schedule?
It's on a little bit of a different schedule. And also, I believe there is not an easement specifically for that property. So that would be something that would have to, we have to address. Jeff may be able to speak to that if he wants to add anything, but I think that's kind of where it is. It's not in the same, on the same schedule, as you said. Yeah. Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, I think both projects are going to take easements. I just don't think the second one's as far along in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Engineering wise.
Yep. Any other comments? Just wanted to let you know kind of where it was at. Okay. Moving on then. Nice dot, the Route 31 mid-block crossing. Okay, and I'm just scrolling down. So we have a work agreement, and this is signed by you, Dorothea, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, the village clerk would sign this.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anybody had any specific questions about this or any comments. It's pretty straight up stuff. Yeah, Lily.
Thank you. I was having difficulty discerning. It was a little complicated, not an engineer. How is it affecting our trees, our street trees, the work that's anticipated? I know Zach isn't here, so that might be a difficult question to have answered this evening, but it was one that maybe Renee could answer it. I don't know. Was there any interference with our street trees?
Not that I'm aware of. But Renee, you may want to speak to that if you have any additional information. I was not aware that there would be anything.
There were a few, I can't remember for the PSAP locations. You and Mayor Plummer and Zach did the walkthrough recently out on the road, which I think this came from. So these are the pedestrian safety action plan areas where they are putting like bump outs and things like that. And when they gave us the presentation last, let's see, was it last year? And I can reshare all the notes that I shared with you last year. There were a couple of trees.
I don't think
that
they're coming out though.
Not, I don't know if it's this location or not.
Yeah.
Some of the other, like, you know how they're doing tons and tons of locations.
Yeah.
And I know one of them, for example, was the improvements they're going to try to make at Sutherland and Monroe, the tree that was recently hit in the car crash. They were trying their best not to take down the trees, but I do believe one or two of them are in the way, and we have been trying to, you know, work around them where possible. I think when they moved the location of this one in front of the library, originally there was a tree in the way, but they had to move it down a little bit because of the utility locations, and I think it actually saved our tree. And most of the locations where they are going to take them out, they're going to put a replacement. Now, granted,
Yes.
but we can look that those are on the plan, so we should pay attention to those.
It's tough. I agree with Lily. It's so difficult reading the NISTOT plans.
It is hard.
You know, there's all these little arrows and signs, you know. But my understanding is that we really, I know, for example, on North Main, when that project happens, we will be losing one street tree, but again, they will be replacing that. That's always part and parcel of the project. But I'm for this, I don't believe we are losing any.
Zach would know for sure.
Yeah, he would for
if anything
sure.
has changed, so we should check with him. But
Yeah.
I'll also look back in those initial notes that we all received probably a year and a half ago when they first gave us all the information. I don't know if anything's changed, but
Yeah, so we'll follow up and we'll send it out to everybody on the board and just let you folks know kind of, you know, what the status is of that.
so do we need a vote on this to get, or what is this? Is this, what are our actions required on this?
Jeff, is there a specific action required for the resolution? Yes.
Yeah, there's a
Oh.
resolution attached to the materials that has to be passed. The only change that I would suggest making, and Dorothea can do this, is she's going to be the one, there's no secretary to the board, so she will be the one doing recordation of the vote and the acknowledgement.
So is there a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Second?
I will second, and then I have a question before we vote.
Okay. Yeah, question, Renee?
I didn't see this, we're not incurring any costs even when DPW has to take on some of this work, correct?
You mean over and above?
Yeah.
No, not that, no.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Thank you.
We have a second to the motion. Are there any other questions? Okay, call the vote, please.
Sure. Trustee Lamfair,
Lanfear, aye.
trustee Lightgev,
Aye.
trustee Stetser,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Plummer, aye.
motion passes.
Okay. And moving on, the marijuana legalization, and Justin, thank you for your decision tree.
Sure.
Dorothea, I know you were following up on a few things with the Board of Elections.
Yes, I did. I did speak to them today. The Board of Elections is researching the questions that I provided. They will be getting back to me there maybe as early as tomorrow, but most likely further in the next week or so. The questions I had asked was the cost of running the referendum, mandatory referendum election. If we move the mandatory referendum to as of January 1st and became part of the March election cycle, would they incur the cost, or is, again, they're a cost to us? So they're getting me all that information, and if they would conduct a referendum vote. Some of the counties are not doing that for the marijuana legislation. So all those questions are to them, and they're going to be getting back to me.
Great. Thank you.
I think we were the first ones to ask the questions, you know,
Yeah.
and I think they're going to be deluged before they know it. So I
Yeah.
think they're going to have to come up with a game plan. Just one quick thing, Renee, I do see your hand, but I was gonna say, Dorothea, we have money typically budgeted
Yes.
for an election, and generally, what's the cost if we were to run one?
I
Is
think
it
Mary
a-
budgets between $1,200 and $1,400
Okay.
for a general election, and this wouldn't be much different. It's the use of the machines and the paying of the election inspectors. And I can't imagine this would be 6 inspectors, it would most likely be 4.
Mhm.
So giving those costs, it's usually 10 to 12 hours at $15, $16 an hour. The reason I'm hoping if we move it into the March election cycle, that's something we're reimbursed for the county.
Right.
But since we're not scheduled this year to have an election, that's the question. Where does that play? Are they going to charge us because we're suddenly having one, or, is it already in their budget to offer it? So obviously wherever we can save $1 would be nice.
Sure. But it is budgeted, and essentially it's budgeted
Yes.
almost every year, just in case we do need to have some kind of an election. or
Absolutely.
Something comes up. So at least we know we're covered if need be. Yes, Renee?
Yep.
That, my first question was, we're not scheduled to have a March election, so I
Right.
wanted to ask about that. Thinks that, it sounds like you're thinking of that. And then the second is, do they do absentee voting for referendums ever, in case we need to plan for that as well?
I can answer that question. We did a referendum vote when it related to the games of chance. If you remember, that appeared on a ballot that also appeared on the absentee ballots. So I would say that would be yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Can't hurt to double check though.
I'll hit him with that question.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Jeff, I saw your law and it looked pretty straightforward. There wasn't much to it. Your draft of the opt-out language.
Correct.
Yep. Yes, Justin?
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that. The laws also seem pretty straightforward to me. I had thought that we were talking about 2 different laws for each of the retail types. Could you, was the NICOM sample, was that just for the one opt-out law for both, Jeff? I can't recall.
The NICOM sample was and/or, so you could craft it for both or one.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so yes, Renee. Oh,
You're
unmute.
muted.
You're
please.
muted.
Unmute.
I'm trying.
go.
I keep hitting my key wrong. Sorry about that. Do we need to craft the law in a specific way if we want to have each one of those items on the referendum? I think, Jeff, last time you said we would be allowed to get a temperature on opting out of both, opting out of one or the other in the referendum, but I'm wondering if we have to write the law in order to craft that referendum in that way, or if we can still have kind of have it segmented, which I don't know if that's the right legal term, but.
I think the motion to move something to a referendum will not be included in the local law. So you can move 2 questions to referendum.
Okay,
Right, Dorothea, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're in charge of what the referendum question is. Isn't that correct?
Correct. My understanding, the Board of Elections will review it, make sure it's worded correctly in their language, but basically, yes, you could move both questions.
So there'd be a 2-question referendum.
could it be 3? Opt out of both, opt out of one, opt out of the other.
I guess.
I would ask the board.
Yeah.
But we could cover that, individual questions opting out of, you could answer yes or no to either of them. I don't think you need both, because you've got 2 separate questions. You could vote yes and no, you could vote no and no, you could vote yes.
Okay, that's a good point. Duh.
Yeah. Can I have a different comment?
Yeah.
Can we review the timeline of what needs to happen when and who is doing what for both the local law and for what we know to date on the referendum? Just some little project management stuff.
Well, the local law needs to be passed prior to midnight of December 31st. So I think Dorothea and I thought that the latest we would want to move it to public hearing, subject to Dorothea dotting the i's and crossing the t's on this, would be like December 1st-ish.
Yeah, the first part of December, yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then the motion for referendum is just a motion. It can happen anytime after that.
The
At the s-
intent was to do them at the same meeting.
If we could, the question's going to arise if that changes the price on the referendum and
Yep.
how the board feels about that.
So we should get to drafting that referendum. It can't hurt to write the copy and start to bounce that around. Is there anything else that we should do?
No, I mean, we certainly can do that, but the urgency, the only urgency here is opting out before December 31st or on or before December 31st. And deciding when you want to move it to referendum.
Yep.
I mean, the questions themselves should be pretty simple and straightforward.
Yeah, and what we've talked about is doing it at the same time. Thanks.
Yes, Justin.
Just a follow-up question to clarify on some of the same issues that I think Renee was asking about too. My understanding is that the local laws are subject to a permissive referendum, which I think is something like Village Law 9900. I just want to make sure that based on the way that this is subject to the permissive referendum, it doesn't, they don't need to be two separate laws, right? Because we're, and this is a legal area that I haven't researched fully, but Jeff, if you could weigh in on that when you get a chance to research it, I would appreciate it.
Well, so the petition is what will drive the referendum. But if the board is determined, let me rephrase that. If the board is certain that it's probably going to send this to referendum, then there's no need to worry about a permissive referendum because that won't happen.
No, this will go right to a mandatory referendum.
If that is the board's
Yeah,
choice.
that
yes.
would be an action on behalf of the board.
Right.
If we were not doing that and didn't communicate that or didn't think we needed to do that, then the public within, I cannot remember the time frame precisely, has
60 days.
60 days, thank you, has that option again, you know, to have that petitioning.
But I guess to Trustee Lightgib's point, it would be easy, I mean, it would be easier for the public to craft their petitions if the board decided not to send it to a mandatory referendum, if there were two local laws. So that's no big deal. You just put a local law, you know, it'll look exactly the same, except it'll use different words. Which one?
Yeah, yes, Dan.
Again, go on the assumption that what we've talked about is that we would do these at the same time, and let's work toward that.
Oh, yep, Dorothea.
Real quick, after attending NICOM, I did attend a class directly involved with the referendum for this, for the marijuana laws. And the recommendation, if you're going to move it to set the public hearing, if you're going to wait till December to go to like the 27th, the 28th of that month, don't wait till the 31st. Try to get it done, you know, the beginning part of that week. And then if you're hoping to get into the March elections timeframe, do your motion to send it to referendum after the first of the year, because that makes it mandatory to go to the March elections. You don't have to do that date of no less than 10, no more than 60. It automatically goes to, you can automatically let it go to the March election. Unless you choose differently and you want to hold it at a separate time, the board has that option.
Right, and then that way we're just dovetailing with an election cycle that's already coming
Correct.
up. And
Correct.
that's where the questions from Dorothea come into play with the Board of Elections about if we can get in their election cycle, then they pick up the cost. Yeah, oh, Dan,
Correct.
did you have your hand up?
Yeah, and that all sounds good. And let's also ask them if we can do these two at the same time and still get in the March cycle. Because that's the ideal scenario and we're going to work
Yeah.
toward it until we get a no.
Yeah, I don't think that's a possibility. Because what
Can't hurt to
the-
ask.
Yeah, well, no, that's not, I don't think they'll tell you that. The timing works that you've got to opt out before the 31st. And then if you're possibly going to make the March election, you have to move it to referendum after January 1st. So that's timing that we're being driven to, not the other way around. It's not up to the Board of Elections.
So that's why, Jeff, you were saying, getting the local law finished, and then we don't necessarily, depending on where we want the referendum to land, it would be done at the move to referendum, to an automatic referendum would be a separate meeting. You know, if we were trying to time it for March, because.
Right,
Yes.
if you're trying to time it for March,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
may be that it's not going to make any difference financially.
Right.
So it's up to the board what the board wants to do.
And we'll have that information from the Board of Elections, you know, I would think sooner than later, you know, they'll turn it around because we're probably the first ones to ask and everybody else is going to be asking. Yes, Lily.
Thank you. The other part, my question is that wouldn't the board wish to consider before setting a referendum date, some of the zoning around what would be possible so that people knew when they were going into the vote in the referendum, what this might be looking like. It would be in this area, but not this area, you know, so you know exactly what you're voting for. Wouldn't we want to have that in place first before it goes to referendum?
Even if it passes, it's still not legal in our village, you know, it's still illegal. So in terms of what we'd have to enact the zoning anyway. But Dan?
We covered this at the last few
Yeah.
meetings and came to the conclusion that we want to gauge interest first. So we've talked about that ad infinitum, Lily, and that's not the direction that we want to go. It's just too complicated. We want to hear from our residents first whether they want this at all, and then we figure it out.
But Jeff, maybe you could speak to that about the fact that, you know, if we have the referendum and people say, gee, we want to opt back in, we still have to enact all the legislation after that. Am I correct?
That is correct. It would not be a permitted use
Right,
until you have a place and a zone to do it.
right. So, you know, again, and I think, Dan, you're speaking, you know, essentially to the process. Do the residents want it? If we do, and, you know, let's say people say, yeah, okay, we want this. We still have the groundwork to do to create the legislation about where it goes and how it all unfolds. Just because people say we want to opt in doesn't mean it happens overnight. You know, we're a legislative body. That's our job, and we'll work with the community and figure that out. Yeah.
One last thing. So if we can't post, if we decide, you know, we can't do the referendum vote at the same time that we do the local law vote, I'll probably just propose a hollow intent to do a referendum. So we, you know, just make it all part of one thing, and then we actually vote on a referendum at another time. I just think for optics point, it matters a lot.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I understand. Just so people are aware that we'll be taking action. Any other comments on this? Yes, Dorothea?
Real quick, if the board decides to opt out and the public agrees with you that you're opt out, you still need to look at your zoning and everything involved. There's still issues that do have to be resolved. It's not the end of the game, because we have to address the public use, where posting, handbook. There's so many pieces. I believe Mayor Plummer was in a class with me, and it's just not over. So we still have to touch this. So we're still going to need the board's focus on resolving all the issues with the zoning and everything else.
Yeah, when Dorothea just mentioned the handbook, well, the employees handbook, We have, DPW workers that have commercial driver's licenses. Do they need to be tested frequently, or do we say you cannot use it? All of these things come into play, just even in terms of just the dailiness of how we're running our government. So
yeah,
work to do. Yeah, Renee.
So it sounds like we still have some disagreement about whether we want to, as a board, move this to referendum simultaneously. And when do we decide that?
I think what Dorothea was trying to tell us in the beginning of the meeting is that the information that she's seeking will help us make that decision. Okay,
Okay.
about the election cycle.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
that'll be forthcoming. I think, we can turn that around pretty quickly.
correct.
And
Yeah.
then somebody will propose a motion and
Yep.
somebody may or may not second it, and then we
Right.
vote.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Thank
Yeah.
you.
yeah. It's all part and parcel of it. Yes, Justin.
Yeah, just another, sorry to return to the same point that I was mentioning before to Jeff, but as I was reading the village law, it seems like it might be beneficial if we're thinking of having two referenda. I don't know if that's the plural for referendum or not, but it seems like it might make sense to break that into two local laws, since each one is the thing that's subject to the referendum. But I might not be reading that right. That was just my impression, and I wanted to make sure that we follow up on that so that we're all acting with the right information.
Okay. All right. Yes, Jeff.
The only reason I can see to do two local laws is to make it easier on people to do a permissive referendum.
Okay. Thanks.
But if we're going to a mandatory referendum, then we're just moving it all along. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Dan, did you have your hand up again?
Nope.
Did I miss you? Okay.
I was just going to say exactly that.
Okay. Okay. Just stretching. All right. Let's see, where are we here? Village composting.
Sure, I think that was my topic.
That's
Thank
your
you very much.
topic.
So since we met last, the town board did have a meeting where Jackie Ebner, one of our residents who's also a member of the town environmental board, gave a presentation. There's some really useful information on that if anybody wants to look back at that. I've also been asking a couple of questions of the CEO of Impact Earth, which I think is the only company offering composting services in this area for things like curbside pickup. And he gave me some interesting numbers. It seems like there are about 40 households in the village that are currently in the Impact Earth program and about 135 in the town. So what we're looking at here are some really different dynamics. We've got about 6.6% of village households based on the occupied households in a recent census, and about 1.3% of the households in the town. So I think that puts us in a really great position to be a leader on some of these types of initiatives. And unfortunately, I can't claim to be an expert on composting. We use a curbside pickup service at our house, and there are a lot of benefits to it that Dr. Ebner could speak to a lot more eloquently than I can. So I'd recommend watching her presentation either to this board earlier on, I think that was March, or to the town board at their last meeting. But I think that there are some real opportunities here, and it may make sense to do some of this town, or it may not. Another thing that I wanted to bring up before I get into some concrete discussions about things that we could do with composting is that, and I don't believe that this board has adopted a resolution to become a climate smart community. And that's something that is a really interesting program from New York State. I'm sure that some of you have heard of it, and they've got initiatives related to building codes, to things like waste diversion, and a lot of other areas in terms of getting people to be informed about issues that are important environmentally. And in talking about composting, this actually is quite related to that Impact Earth program, in that this would actually give us points towards an eventual adoption of climate smart practices. They've got kind of different levels of certifications for villages. So At the next meeting, what I'd like to do is have us look at the sample resolution. There's one on the New York State Climate Smart website, and see if that's something that we'd be interested in signing up for. Registering doesn't do anything really other than say, it gets our icon on the map, and says that we're interested in looking at this. And then we've got other goals that we could carry on from that point. So I would like to look at that. It's a pretty short, straightforward resolution. So I'll ask Dorothea to have a copy of that in the next packet. And I'll follow up with the URL after this meeting to so you've got the pointer there. But if I might just continue for 1 second before questions. So in terms of composting, there are two things that that we would be possibly looking at. And I think that there might be a short-term thing the board could adopt as well as a longer-term program. So in terms of the climate smart initiatives, they break it up into different types of composting initiatives. One is for municipal buildings, and that can give you a certain number of points based on what proportion of the municipal buildings are using composting programs. And then there are other initiatives for residential programs. It could be for drop-off, or it could be for a pilot program for curbside pickup. And so we've got in our packet for this meeting, the last meeting, some different prices. I believe that those are the same as the current pricing. As I was looking at these different options, one thing that struck me as possibly low-hanging fruit, which could be eventually composted, because you can compost fruit too. What I was thinking is they have a program where you can just get tote swaps. And they've got different sizes of totes, right? So there's the 32 gallon up to 96 gallon or something. And the 32 gallon only costs $10 per swap. So as a quick step into some of this composting, we could just get a 32 gallon tote and set a budget of something like $20 a month plus tax, and have it at Village Hall. And Dorothea, maybe you could, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you thought there might be a spot for diverting staff food, leftovers from lunch or anything, you can even compost. Of course, this is the high temperature composting, so you can compost plates and things like that, and even meat. This would give us a way for staff to start using that option at a very low cost of something like $20 a month. I think we constrain it to plus some taxes for a couple of tote swaps. It would actually, I believe, you've got to submit these things for approval with Climate Smart. But I think that would give us a certain number of points. We'd even get more if we put one down at DPW. So again, the first pass of this would be just for municipal staff. It would be over winter. So, I think things like smell would not be as much of an issue. We could see how much waste is generated. And I think they've got a web portal where it tells you how much waste is diverted from landfills. That would kind of be a stepping stone to providing something like a residential drop-off. So let's say that we found out that we weren't filling up the totes, or we could manage a bigger tote. You could tell residents they could drop it off, and we're automatically into the next level of the Climate Smart program there, with probably not that much of an increase in cost. So that would be something to consider in the future. So the other thing, and then I wanted to open this up for discussion and get some thoughts, would be a kind of a curbside pickup program. And that's a different category in Climate Smart. They suggest that we have a pilot program. The category is actually for a pilot program, which indicates to me that it's not something that we're doing forever. But we've got about 40 people in the village currently doing curbside pickup. And it seems like that's really gaining some traction. We could say, for example, that we're willing to pay up to $500 a month, and we would subsidize $5 a month for people using the program. I think that we could discuss this, but it might be unfair to say only new people, because then, certain people who are early adopters are left out of this. So we could say that, the 40 people currently enrolled get subsidized $5 a month. And then we've got room for 60 more people in a pilot program, and those afterwards would go on to sort of a wait list. and it could be for a finite amount of time to evaluate the success of that kind of program. So it's kind of about, gaining adoption, helping to educate people about composting. And I think that would be a slightly larger program. So anyway, I think the first thing that we could do very easily is say, $20 plus tax or so, a couple of tote swaps at Village Hall, and we're on our way. So anyway, that would be my first immediate proposal. Any thoughts or concerns, other directions we might want to go in with this?
I love the idea of composting. I've composted my whole life, and I don't have curbside pickup because I composted in my yard. So, I just want to raise the point, and maybe, Jeff, you may want to speak to this as well. You're subsidizing a certain segment of our village for somebody's service. And there's other people, I know there's other people like me that just compost, that's how we live. And we're not getting the benefit of that. So I'm a little concerned that we're sort of singling out a little bit. I don't know if Jeff, maybe if you have any thoughts on that or how that would be perceived.
I don't have any legal thoughts on it.
Yeah.
The perception is, that's the board's call.
Yeah, it's just, it's, in other words, this is a company with a service, and I understand that. And believe me, I'm all about it. I think, and I love the idea of it at Village Hall, and also DPW for that matter. I'm just wondering about subsidizing a certain number of residents. I don't know. I'm throwing that out. I'm not so sure I'm that comfortable. Renee?
Last time when we talked about this, Zach was here, and I saw his surprise when we said maybe we located it at DPW. So I want to make sure that when we're looking at these options, and I saw Dorothea's face as well as being responsible for another thing. I think if we're going to do this, it needs to be as easy as possible. And, that's the option one makes the most sense, where everybody's kind of in charge of their own. Having to dump it somewhere is definitely a disincentive, having it picked up. And I know it's more expensive. I think we'll have greater adoption if we look at something where it's not going to involve more responsibility for DPW in particular. So two of these options have a big center at DPW, and there are lots of other things that come with that if we were to.
Yeah, and
put
Zach's
something
not
like
here
that.
tonight to weigh in. He couldn't be at the meeting this evening.
Yeah.
So, that's a consideration for sure. Yes, Lily.
Thank you. Yes, I was wondering if it would be a good option to have a workshop where we would have experts come and speak to villagers about what the options would be. Self-composting in your yard, what that would involve, how to do that, what some of the firms might be. They might come and talk about their programs, and that way we could kind of gauge people's interest and have a more educated dialogue regarding how the board would like to move forward if indeed they were to adopt such a program as Justin has suggested.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, Dan?
Yeah, great idea, Lily and Justin. Applaud you for working on this. And I just want to pursue all avenues on this and come to the ideas that are right. And that's it. Just wanted to show my support vocally.
Great, thanks. Yes, Dorothea? Mute, unmute there.
Sorry, before I get to the public comments, really, my face was, I was trying to think if we generate any food, because I know I ate everything I brought today. But on top of it, no, where to put it in the office where it's, we are tight in space. But really looking at the American Legion, they really do generate, I assume, a lot of waste on Tuesdays. I think that would be a more appropriate push in the Village Hall. Looking at our office, honestly, I take home most of what I bring and back and forth, and I don't think we generate a lot of waste. I'm sure we do occasionally. There's a sandwich or something, but honestly, looking at the Legion would be more appropriate area for the waste consideration. So if you're ready for the Q&A from the public, I will.
I just want to add something really quickly. And also in the office, we recycle. So for example, if somebody has yogurt in a plastic cup, they'll recycle that. So I think Dorothea raises a really good point. The Legion on Tuesdays, they cook up a storm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they do. Okay, the first comment we have is from Dave Ferris. He said, consider a $5 a month subsidy for 1 year to current and new users to encourage adoption. Maria, she did not provide a last name. Pittsford Schools is currently using composting in all school buildings.
yeah. Which is great.
Terrific ideas,
Yeah. Really good. Yep.
Maria Vanette.
Justin, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just really quickly, I appreciate all the feedback, and I think a great a workshop would be a great step forward as well, especially as it gets to the residential composting options. With Village Hall, I was kind of thinking, I think the totes, they would probably empty outside. It's probably not something they would bring in. So, I initially was thinking about, just a corner behind Village Hall somewhere where anybody could use it. And then, whether it's geared towards a special group at Village Hall, I think my understanding of the Climate Smart program is that, just having it at the facility and having educational opportunities to use that is the primary goal and what the points would be associated with.
Yeah, great. Yep. Yeah, Marty's right. Yeah, you compost, you take it outside. Yep.
There are a few chats. Do you want to read them?
Yep, just have one. Jackie Ebner, the Spiegel Center currently contracts with Impact Earth and has toters.
Yep.
And that's all I have.
Okay, great. Oh, yep, Justin?
Yeah, I just did have one other legal question too. I think this came up in the context of the town board meeting. There's only really one provider for this service. Jeff, I was wondering if you had any thoughts, now or later, I don't want to put you on the spot, about steering people, if we did pursue an option of steering people towards this one service or using this one service. I guess it's under the amount for competitive bidding anyway, what we're talking about, but I just want to make sure that we're not running afoul of anything if we're essentially choosing one company because they're the only player.
How would we do the steering?
Well, if there is a subsidy, I imagine that it would be an arrangement worked out with the company that would bill Village Hall, and we would essentially pay based on village usage. So that there wouldn't be another company involved.
Yeah, I guess I have a general, I'm sorry, Dan.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
I guess I have a general concern about the subsidy. I mean, that seems like a gift to me. And I don't know that we can be in the gifting business.
Yeah, so this is where I wanted to jump in. This seems really ripe for the workshop discussion where we kick around a whole bunch of ideas.
I mean, maybe it could even be, I'm sort of thinking, because we are also looking into a refuse district potentially. So I'm thinking, maybe there is one provider, but that if maybe there could be something where, there's a threshold of a certain number of households in the village sign up and then the rate gets dropped, I don't know. I'm just talking through it, but maybe that's the kind of thing that we could, look at in the workshop as we move forward. Maybe we can combine it with the town, so all the households in town and village become involved. And then maybe the rate drops for both municipalities. So. Yep, any other? So the action item coming out of this, do we want to put together a workshop? Let's come up with an action item because this is a great idea.
Yeah, that sounds great. Do we propose a date or?
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we, Justin, why don't you and I get together on this and we'll figure out kind of, the parameters a little bit. We'll bounce it back to the board just in some emails and then just bring it back and then maybe, get something scheduled. How's that sound?
Yep, sounds
Okay?
good.
Okay, great. Okay, Dorothea, was your hand up or you were just?
No,
Okay.
just checking to see if we had a date or if we were scheduling.
Oh,
But
okay.
I'll wait
Yeah,
on instructions from the board.
Oh, okay. All right. Next item, board rules of procedure.
Is this the same draft that was on the Google Doc?
This is the same one. The only difference, so we took, for those of you following along at home, we took everyone's comments and put them in everyone's suggestions, because at the last meeting, we still had a few more suggestions and comments that weren't incorporated. So we just put them all together here. The only one that isn't in here is a suggestion from one trustee to make the time limit 4 minutes instead of 3 minutes.
We've been, so to that question, we've been sort of unofficially going on 3 minutes, and it's been working really well. So I don't see a need to extend it. Obviously, if somebody's got a need to get a more complicated point out, they could certainly ask. But 3 has been good.
Okay. All right. Yep. Lily?
Okay, I will agree that is comfortable, as long as, I don't know if we can state that anywhere, or whether it's just an understanding that we have, that as Dan has pointed out, that if somebody has a complex, concept that they would like to get across, that we're just, they're not just cut off and they feel under the gun, so to speak, when they're addressing the board, that they've got to speak quickly in order to get their point across. And if I might point out, for instance, some board members may recall when we had a meeting regarding a proclamation that we were making about equality and diversity in the village, and we had a room full of people, overly full of people at the time, many who were not even villagers, and were speaking, and what they were saying to the board was important, and we wanted to hear everything that they said, and no one was limited, is what my point is. And so there are times when we really don't want to impose those limitations, because they have something important to impart to us and we want to hear it. So I think if we have that, I don't know what to call it, an understanding amongst ourselves, that we are in agreement that when people are compelled to come and take the time to speak to us about something they feel very strongly about, that we would certainly be open to extending the time limit for them.
I think you make a really good point. I also, and again, these rules are flexible, even when you read the NICOM guidelines, for example, anything can come back to the discretion of the board. And obviously if, and I was at that meeting, and I agree, I thought that was probably just an extraordinary opportunity for a wide range of our residents to really say things from the heart. That was a very powerful meeting, and it was wonderful. So I think that's completely comes back to the discretion of the board. I think the 3 minute is like, it's a guideline at this point, and I think we're all aware of that. People feel passionately about things and want to opine a bit longer. Yeah. Oh, yes, Justin.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment briefly on this initiative, and I think that it seems that we're all on the same page about working to find ways to create a welcoming and inclusive environment for a small village. We've got less than 1,400 residents, and generally not very many people come to talk. I looked back at the minutes pretty closely. In some of our most popular discussions, there were 6 people. So in the discussion around the pride flag, we had 6 different people coming to talk. And I was not able to find another topic with more than that. We do have guidelines in place, of course. They were adopted. You can look online in 2016, in April, the April meeting, April 12th, I think it was. And until recently, no one remembered that they existed. Nobody remembered that we had any guidelines. And they were presented by Mayor Plummer, so as a trustee at that time, and they were in place, and they were brought about to limit some discussion that was, there was excessive, redundant discussion, as I understand it, around 75 Monroe, and maybe some disrespectful comments. And so those guidelines were put in place for that purpose and not needed afterwards. So the context in which this discussion is brought up again has been when there were some people who were making comments that were critical of the current administration and the way that the government is operating right now. And in certain meetings, it was people were cut off at exactly 3 minutes. They were given no notice, and they were given no time to summarize. I think we need to remember that these are our guidelines. They're not rules. We were even mixing this up in our discussion a couple of moments ago. In the NICOM samples that these came from, there's a set of board rules, and within that there are guidelines. And it's up to the discretion of the mayor as she presides over the meetings by state law about how these are going to be enforced. And so, at the beginning of this meeting, our clerk helpfully just said, she didn't have the meetings, the guidelines in front of her. She just said, treat each other with courtesy. We've got a QA section. And if you have a comment, raise your hand. And, that was fantastic. And I think that overall, that situation where a resident was cut off after 3 minutes when he was being critical, that wouldn't have been addressed by the old rules, and that wouldn't have been addressed by the new rules. These are things that are really up to discretion of the mayor, not the board and the rules that we decide to enact. And so I think that we've got the rules in place in case we need to fall back on them, but I think that it does not address a fundamental issue of not being open and not being inclusive in our small village to be implementing these guidelines.
Thanks so much
and
for
so
that.
I'm
Oh,
not
sorry, I
in
thought you were
favor.
finished.
No, that's
Sorry.
okay. So as these do not address the fundamental problem that I'm seeing, I appreciate the effort that's been put into them. And I would really just ask the mayor specifically as she presides over the meetings to be a little more welcoming and a little bit more inclusive. And I don't think that we needed these discussions, to be perfectly honest.
Thanks so much. And I believe you were the one this has now been on the agenda, I think, for the last 3 or 4 meetings. Dan, I see your hands up, and then I'd like Dorothea to speak to, the guidelines and how things have always happened for a number of years. Yes, Dan.
Okay, so I want to make a motion to adopt the guidelines for public comment as written. And of course, we're going to use common sense and common courtesy if people step outside the lines. It doesn't need to be any more defined than that.
Before we call, I just
So I
wanted
made a
to
motion.
have Dorothea weigh in on the guidelines and how that somehow this is new.
The guidelines are not new. Yes, they haven't been read, addressed in a while. They were actually, I think, they came in 2014. This was when I came to the village. We used to have public comment period in Webster, and we did not have it here. And I talked to Mayor Corby at the time. He agreed to add it. We added it. The guidelines came around because we were getting some discourtesy with people, and it continued. And then we did the guidelines. We used to print them on the back of the agendas to try to make sure everybody was seeing them, to make it clear. They were posted in the room. They have been around. They've been amended several times. We did have other situations where people did get out of line. And I will say, even before this administration took over, we had comments coming in when we went to virtual that were not very, I'm not trying to make this sound childish, but they weren't very nice. People have been very discourteous. And I will say this has gotten much worse with the current administration. It's not blaming anybody, but people have overstepped. And I have been on record saying I will not read those comments. We do need these posted. We do need to remind the public that they do need to be courteous, because I think this form of reaching out to the public is open that door for people to be discourteous really quick. And it's only through, monitoring and making sure we're not doing that. I'm not gonna let those comments come through. And that is the choice of the clerk. The board disagrees with the actions I'm taking. I'm sorry, but I don't think some of those things need to be read. So having these around right now makes pure sense, because we've had a lot of people overstepping those bounds. I'm not trying to cut off people who have something to add. There's been comments tonight that have been beautiful and added to the discussion. That's what we are supposed to do. But there has been comments that do not add to the discussion and are very discourteous as board members. So I am in full support of guidelines. We need those.
Great. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
May I speak to that motion?
Oh, okay.
May I speak to the motion?
Yes,
Before I second it, may I speak to the motion?
okay.
I'm wondering if we are talking about, if it's a point of clarification, are we talking about merely the guidelines for public comment? Or are we talking about the entire packet that we received regarding the NICOM's guidelines for public meetings?
No, it was the one in the packet, guidelines for public comment, the ones that we all worked on. I
Okay,
mean,
so-
we've been working on this at the last few meetings. We had a whole workshop about this. Everybody has really had their say in this.
Yes, I agree. But what I'm asking here, Dan, is that there's the public comment section is one section of the entire package of the NICOM guidelines for public. Are we looking, or is your motion for just the public speaking part, or for the entire guidelines for public hearings, public meetings, New York State public meetings? That's my clarification question.
So my motion was just for the guidelines for public comment that we
Thank you.
really crafted.
Okay,
But
thank you.
if somebody else wants to add the other ones, then
Would you want to
Speak up.
amend that to add in the NICOM guidelines for meetings?
I don't, but
Oh,
if somebody else does.
Maybe that's what Lily was asking.
Yeah.
Am I understanding that?
Yes, that's correct, because
Oh, those are great guidelines.
But they might, they contradict some of what we've just put out in our guidelines for public comment. So I think it would be, there are some public comment guidelines in that meeting procedure. So it feels to me that we should maybe do these in two separate things, because we did have a workshop. We had a ton of people show up to attend that and gave us a lot of good input. And we agreed at that workshop 2 meetings ago, might have been 3, that we were going to pretty much take the town's policy and, you know, craft it to how we would like it. And that's what this comment policy reflects. That's how I feel.
That was my
Thank you for the
understanding of Dan's
clarification.
motion, right? That's my understanding of what Dan, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there?
So
a
then we
second?
can tackle the other piece another meeting, but let's just I just feel like this has been on our agenda 1,000 times and we're ready.
Or would you want to say that the ones that we wrote supersede anything in?
We
the
could do that.
NICOM ones?
We could do that too. I just don't know if there's anything contradictory. Because
just so
like
you
one of
know-
theirs says 4 or 5 minutes, I think, to speak.
Just
And
so you
ours
know,
says
having
3.
been to NICOM and having been in meetings that reviewed those guidelines, they're guidelines, they're suggestions. As a municipality, we take what we want and we modify as we see fit. They are not directives. Am I correct in saying that way, Jeff? Is that the,
Yeah, they're guidelines.
yeah. I
Okay,
mean,
And
so-
they're,
so
you know,
then-
they're basic rules of procedure, and the board can always on motion, vary them for whatever reason might exist if the variance occurs.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. Yes, Justin.
Yeah, I appreciate talking about the other parts of the guidelines. I also tend to think that it makes sense to separate those out. I think there are some really great ones there, and ones that address certain pressure points that I've noticed on the board. Perhaps what we could do is discuss those in the next meeting. You know, just specifically
Okay.
take those out. If any of us
Alright.
have, you know, parts they feel particularly strongly about, maybe we can put those down in a Google Doc or something to discuss. But I don't think that they should be adopted as is either. So that would be my suggestion at least. I just wanted to mention as well that, you know, I'm not against all guidelines. I agree that it's good to have guidelines in place, especially around things like courtesy. Those are in the 2016 guidelines. My point is just that I think that this doesn't address the problem that we've been seeing on the board.
Yep. So there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Lily, did you second or do you?
Lanfear second. Yes, I just needed a clarification in order to do so. Thank you.
So how do we call the vote?
Dorothea will call it.
I will call it. We have a comment from the public. Does the board want to entertain that now?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, Dave Ferris, he says, I want to applaud the board for reaching a reasonable guideline position to facilitate citizen engagement. Our small community has been known for neighborliness and respect of one another. Common sense and respect should be applied to the board as well as private citizens. Thank you. Okay,
Great,
board's
thanks.
ready for me to call the vote.
Yep.
Trustee Stetser,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
trustee Lampier,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay. Next up, vaccination policy.
So I got the last time we talked about this, there were some outstanding questions for the attorney. I got those answered. The answers to those are clarified in the version that we got. So I have no further questions on it. And I'd make a motion to approve as my only edit was it says they've got till October 1st, which is like, 3 days from now. I would change the date to something that's reasonable.
Yeah, Dorothea, yeah.
Just real quick, we have, just so the board is realizing, I sent these out late. I apologize for the delay because I had to verify with Christian. You have two different policies. You have the COVID-19 vaccination policy and the one that offers the testing policy. So just so we're clear which one we're going from. Real quick, on the vaccination policy, there is a correction in line 3. The employees who have not yet been, it should say fully vaccinated, shall wear a CDC approved mask. Just because we're saying they, if they only had one of the vaccinations, they can come, but they still need the mask. And I think we need to indicate fully or through the full cycle or whatever it is to make sure that's appropriate.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Justin.
Yeah, I certainly understand that there are issues that come up, and waiting to hear back from our labor attorney is one of those. But I didn't get this until 5:39 in an email today. I know that we've discussed these before, but as it was just listed on the agenda as a vaccination policy, I had no time to think about recent context and this matter in depth. I'd really like to try to get things on the agenda for the public to consider and for the board to consider with a little bit more notice, especially if we're talking about policies.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Dorothea. Yeah.
Actually, you've seen both of these policies.
Yeah.
These are the same exact policies the board received prior to the last meeting. There was no change. There was a question Trustee Keating had, which was followed up with the labor attorney. And as I said, I just found out that question was answered. So I did not want to put something in unless if there was something else to give to the board. So
No, there was
that
nothing
a
was
delay.
added in, there were
Nothing
no
was changed.
changes to what you had received several weeks ago. So we're literally looking at the same thing that was made public in a packet at the last meeting. And just revisiting it. So there is one thing that I would make note of, and I think it's the vaccination and testing policy under item number 8. I think there should be something about falsification of test results may result in termination or separation from employment, I think is the language that our attorney used.
Sure.
I just think.
I mean, that's just obvious but yeah, it should be in there.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion. Let's do these in 2 and we can have discussion. Let's do these in 2 different ones. So the first one.
Excuse me,
on my
Dan, real
list-
quick. Do we want to come up with a date?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to
Okay.
propose. I was going to propose that we adopt the Village of Pittsford COVID-19 vaccination policy with an effective date under item 1 and 2 of October 15. What do you guys think? 2 more weeks?
Sure.
And with the addition to bullet 8 that Mayor Plummer just stated.
Okay. Everybody clear on that? Yes. Justin?
No, clarification, please. Which one are we talking? Are we talking about mandatory vaccination or masking and weekly testing?
You said the vaccination policy. Oh, you know what? And item number 8 is in the other one. I see where we're going. Yep.
Yeah, no, it's the
Which
one
one are
with
you-
the header that is Village of Pittsford COVID-19 vaccination policy.
Right.
The other one is vaccination and testing policy. So
Right.
the one that is motion is vaccination policy.
Okay, because the item number 8 that I mentioned is in the second one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll amend
We'll
it.
hold off.
Yeah, so I'll amend the motion. The motion is for the Village of Pittsford COVID-19 vaccination policy to be adopted with dates in bullets 1 and 2 of October 15, 2021.
Okay. Oh, Steve, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Well,
your-
no, the motion was made.
Okay, okay, well
and
then,
somebody
yeah,
maybe
second, and
seconds
then we'll
it and
discuss.
then.
Yeah,
comment.
let's have a second then, please.
I'll second.
Oh, she unmuted. Okay, thank you. We have a second. Okay, yes, Steve.
So now you're voting on the first one of just the vaccination without the testing, without discussion on which one you want to vote on?
They're both in effect. We're going to vote on both of them.
We're voting on both.
So we're doing these one at a time.
All right, I just want to, I guess, state for my own, my own whatever, that we talk about being inclusive and honoring other people's wishes and lives. And I want you to remember that when it comes to this vote, please.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Yeah, yes, Justin?
Yeah, I think I stated this at a previous meeting. I don't, and since then we've actually adopted a more thorough masking policy. Right now, I understand Village Hall is essentially closed because of a COVID exposure. I haven't really observed how effective the masking policies are. I think that it makes sense to be incremental and to evaluate our progress and take the least impactful steps that are justified based on our observations. And I think that we run a risk there. I understand this is an important situation with the pandemic. Personally, I have no objection to vaccination. I'm vaccinated, and my kids will be when they're eligible too. But that's my personal choice. I just think that it makes more sense to be incremental with this and do something where masking and the weekly testing is done, and then evaluate, because I think there's a risk, also a cost to the village of people who may leave based on restrictions that we impose. And we could cause staffing issues there too. So I would rather wait for further guidance and do this when we've got maybe county level recommendations. I don't think that those have come out yet. So I would wait for those things and take a more incremental step.
Well, we actually have the most current information that was given to us by our attorney. Oh, Dorothea, I'm sorry. Did you have your? No, okay.
So noted, Justin.
So, and that's what was drafted. So this is the most current, based on the most current information. Yes.
So you said that we've got the most current information. I understand from our attorney, and that's certainly valuable. From the county level, has there been any advice to other municipalities based on these kinds of policies?
First of all, we're doing mask. The employees have an option. If they don't want to be vaccinated, then they just get tested. I mean, we're doing that. I don't understand where this is going. I think this is actually fair. If you're not going to be vaccinated, then you get tested. I mean, we've talked about this. Yes, Dan.
So we've talked about the exact same thing at the last few meetings. There's a proposal to vote. There's nothing new that has happened. There's nothing new from our lawyers. We've been over and over this. I mean, I could make the same points that I've made at other meetings. Justin could make the same points that he's made at other meetings. And there comes a time when we vote. We've talked about this ad infinitum. Steve has talked about it. It's time to vote.
Okay, yep, Justin, and then we're gonna vote. Oh, and then Renee. I'm sorry, I didn't see Renee's hand.
I'm just confused. I'm sorry. So I understood from Dan's motion that we're voting on mandatory vaccination without the ability to essentially opt out of that with the weekly testing. But then, Mayor, from what you said, it sounded like we're giving the option of testing. So I just want to clarify what we're voting on.
The
The next
first,
vote-
and then there's
Dan,
a
go ahead.
second policy that we're going to propose right after if this one's passed, then we vote on that one too.
But you can't have their conflicting policies. That's what I was gonna ask as well, Justin.
Oh.
They're.
Okay. So I read both of them and thought they could both work.
No.
Okay.
I was
No.
thinking
Either
that you wanted
or.
to change the dates to be reflected in the testing policy. That's why I was saying number
Okay.
8 was in the second one.
Okay, then in that case, I want to amend my motion.
I see where you're going now. I was just thinking, oh, we need to have the dates that are
So
effective.
in that case, I want to amend it to the voting on the Village of Pittsford COVID-19 vaccination and testing policy with with the dates being what?
You said October 15th.
15th.
Yeah.
See, because in the second one, they didn't have the date and we need to have an effective date.
Correct. We'll just say effective October 15th.
Yeah, and we'll just put it in at the beginning.
Okay.
Okay, so we are, and that gets back to Steve's question and Justin, so.
I see
that-
where you're going with that.
There are two different policies and we can't
Right.
vote yes to both of them. Yes, we have.
Okay, so I'm gonna, is the motion then the same? For
Yes, but then this one includes the amendment to bullet 8.
Correct.
Right. And it is the Village of Pittsburgh COVID-19 vaccination and testing policy.
Okay.
Okay,
Gotcha.
just so everybody's clear on that. Yes, Jeff?
So you're only adopting one policy, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That's correct.
The board had the option of both policies, which way they wanted to go, mandatory and no option for testing, or mandatory with an option for testing.
But to be clear, it's testing if there's a medical exemption or a religious exemption.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the opt-out.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Can we call the vote, please?
Yes. Trustee Lampier?
I'm sorry, can I just ask another question clarifying here? I'm still, and I appreciate the discussion on that last point. I think that was really important. I hope that we can continue to let people ask questions so that we're clear on what we're actually voting on here, because that did seem to make a difference a moment ago. So I just really like everybody to be respectful and open to this discussion. So now I want to clarify, since this has been a couple of weeks since I looked at it, and I know that we've gone over this before. So the vaccination and testing policy, is the testing only available with those two exemptions, or is it personal choice in order to get tested without having to rely on the exemptions? The latter was my understanding, that you could just basically decide that you're not getting tested without providing the proof related to a medical or religious exemption, and then that's fine.
No, that's not how it reads.
First, I'm going to read this. I think it'll be helpful. All village employees and board members who have not been fully vaccinated for COVID-19 shall wear a CDC-approved mask or face covering at all times, while in the workplace or while in a village vehicle with other occupants, and shall undergo FDA-approved COVID-19 testing and show proof of a negative test on a weekly basis. Yeah, thank you for putting that up, Dorothea, just so everybody can see it.
I didn't, I have to say Dan did.
It's me. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Okay, just so you know, if you need to revisit that. Everybody just take a minute just to make sure you're, reading it through.
Very clear that if
Yeah.
if you've not completed a vaccine regimen, you may not come into the office. And the only thing that allows you to is a medical or a religious exemption, and then weekly testing.
Okay,
It's a little different. Go ahead, Lily. Sorry.
Am I being recognized? I'm sorry.
yes, you are.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the question. That both policies mandate end of employment for non-vaccinations. There
No.
is no option.
Possibly.
That's not true. That is an incorrect.
here.
That's incorrect.
It's right here. It may result in
It may.
discipline, including but not limited to separation from employment.
on both options. There is no option for masking and testing weekly.
Yes, there
And
is.
then,
There is.
and then
Item
not
number
requiring.
one. In
Right
item
here.
number one, go back to item number one. Right?
Okay,
And just take a minute and read that and understand that it says may and not shall. And so there's a different implication of that, and maybe Jeff can speak to that regarding any separation from employment. Is number one clear to people? If you're not vaccinated, you have to undergo COVID-19 testing and show proof of a negative test on a weekly basis.
right.
Okay. That's not saying you're losing your job. It's saying if you're not vaccinated, this is what you have to do. And the second line says, if you are vaccinated and you've shown proof, then you're exempt from the weekly testing and the face covering.
And it also says, if you're not vaccinated, you cannot come into the office. And that's number 3.
If they have not complied with the testing. If you do
Right.
not come, if you had showed no proof that that you've been tested, you cannot enter the workplace if you're unvaccinated.
And the exemptions are here.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay, so it's not stating that if you're unvaccinated, you cannot come into the workplace. It's saying you can, as long as you test.
Yes, and you test negative.
Okay.
You
Well,
can't.
that goes without saying.
Yeah, well, I'm saying it because I
Okay.
need clarity. Yeah, yes, Justin.
Okay, so in the interest of clarity, what I understood Trustee Keating say is that this requires vaccination. I do not see it requiring
It
vaccination.
doesn't.
I see there being an option. So if you want to mask up and test weekly until the end of the world, unless we change the policy, that's
Yep.
your choice. And you don't have to, the exemptions aren't necessary for that choice. Because
No,
my understanding, just to, I'm not trying to, and maybe this is another reason that we need to have this in the packet. I'm sorry to go back to that, but this, to me, the accommodations are being made regardless. So in the way that this is written to me, if you have a religious exemption for a mask, then we would have to consider that, and you might not have to wear a mask. I don't know what those criteria would be, but that's the way that I'm actually reading this right now. So,
But
if
you
we-
cannot, you have to show that you test negative for COVID no matter what, because just as we want to protect everyone's rights, if you say you're not going to get vaccinated, we need to protect the people that also are working in this building that have chosen to be vaccinated. So it works two ways. And I think this is a very straightforward document. Starts out, if you're not vaccinated, this is what you do. If you're vaccinated, this is what you can do. I mean, I think it's, to me, straightforward. Yeah. Renee.
But to Justin's point, if we're making an accommodation, we've said, if you don't choose to get vaccinated, whatever that reason is, you need to undergo weekly testing. We don't need number 7. Because we already are.
I have a feeling our attorney put that in there because that is something that has been, and maybe Jeff can speak to it, although he didn't write this, so I'm not going to totally hold his feet to the fire, but I'm thinking that has been identified as part of policy in other municipalities and also with other institutions. So I think, it was put in there for that reason. But
and to be clear, this is very important. Failure to comply with this policy may result in discipline, including but not limited to separation from employment.
yes, and falsification of, your results may, not shall, may result in separation from employment. And I think that's appropriate. I think anybody would put that in. We have a motion and we have a second. Can we call the vote?
Can we stop screen sharing so we can see everybody? Thank you.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, real quick.
Jeff said something. Did Jeff have something?
Did you need to
Can we
speak?
get Jeff to, it looked like he had his hand up so
Oh,
we can
Jeff, I'm
clarify
sorry.
why
I
we
didn't- I
need those
didn't-
exemptions if we're
I'm
already.
sorry, I didn't see you, Jeff. I'm sorry.
I
Yeah.
really don't want to belabor this, but I think 7 is in there because that's standard language you put in anytime you make a requirement in the workplace. I mean, that
Mhm.
kind of requirement. That's my understanding. To say
Okay,
that I know that for sure, no. This is not my area of expertise, but I believe that's the point.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Yep, okay.
Okay, we're ready?
Yep.
All right. Trustee Stetser,
aye.
trustee Lampier,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay.
We do. Dorothea,
Yes. Oh,
I have a quick question. I can't, I saw it somewhere, but we have, regardless of what this is, we have a masking policy right now in the
Correct.
office that because of where we are in the infection rates in
There-
our county, that everyone's wearing masks regardless
there's
of their
two
vaccination.
practices going on right now. The board passed a motion last meeting that all non-vaccinated employees must wear a mask at all times except when eating. In addition, the mayor and I determined that given the situation with the pandemic, when the public comes in, they must take their temperature mask. Employees must mask when working with the public. It's just straightforward. So, you know, if I'm at my desk, I don't necessarily have a mask on and say it straight out because I'm usually well beyond 6 feet of everybody. So when I get off from my desk, I usually take my mask if I'm going to be anywhere near 6 feet. And if I'm definitely waiting on the public, I put on my mask.
And as a vaccinated person, she's complying with CDC guidelines.
So that is what we're doing. So you can kind of say we have two concurrent policies going on at the same time.
Yes, Lily.
Had we determined yet, had we voted on the cost for the testing? Whose
The
responsibility
testing-
that would be?
Yeah,
This
that's what was clarified from the lawyer. That's what the outstanding question was. And the determination by the lawyer was that it's the responsibility of the employee to bear the testing costs. We had talked about perhaps if there was an exemption for a medical reason, that the village would bear that cost. The attorneys advised us against it, saying that would be preferential treatment. So we didn't actually have to change anything that was in the document.
Okay.
But that was the answer from the lawyer.
Correct. So it's up to the employee to incur that cost and present that testing schedule proof to us every week from this point as of October 15th. And you did
Okay.
have a Q&A question.
Sure.
I'm sorry, Christine Mule, she has a comment. She says, please see my comment in chat. The second line contradicts what just explained the masking policy. I'm not reading comments from chat. So if you have a comment, please post it in the questions and answers. It's too hard to go back and find those comments.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts.
Here it is in the chat. Do you want me to read it?
That'll be a,
Well, we're trying to get people to submit things in the Q&A, you know, so the clerk can
Oh, okay.
handle it.
It's right here. I can read
Okay,
it.
yep, yeah,
Okay.
sure. but we
I am
would
not
prefer-
sure it makes sense to allow masking exemption for those who are vaccinated. Breakthrough cases remain a large concern, and while children under 12 are not yet vaccinated, I think it makes sense to be more conservative.
which we
Thank you,
currently,
Christine.
and we
Yeah.
currently are doing that. And actually the policy does say the religious exemption is for immunization, not regarding masking. So that's where that's directed.
Okay. All
Okay.
right, moving on. The appointment of Stacy Freed as an alternate to the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals. I'd like to recommend Stacy to become an alternate to the board. Many of you know Stacy Freed. She was a trustee until fortunately her landlord ended up selling the house where she was renting in the village, and she moved just outside the village line. But she also has worked on our newsletter. She's familiar very much so with the construction industry. And she's an award-winning journalist. I think you can see that in terms of, the awards that she's gotten. I think she'd be a wonderful alternate on this board, and I'm recommending that the board consents to the appointment this evening. Yes, Lily.
Thank you. Number one, when the board considered and adopted the policy, change in policy to include town residents as board possibilities for board appointments, the discussion revolved around their special skills, that we would expand our search for board members if they were engineers, architects, for instance, that would bring something of a professional nature to our boards, because we have a limited pool in the village of such specific requirements. And that was the discussion. The second was that when the request was put out for board interest, and I do not believe it was said anywhere in our advertising that we were entertaining also from the town. So I don't know that people in the town were aware that we would also be considering them for board appointments, and they have no way of knowing that. The third point I'd like to make is that I do not believe personally that when we have villagers who are willing to serve, that they should take a second place to residents who live in the town, that stakeholders who live in the village should be given first preference and first consideration. I know of one because everyone received the same letter that I received that was sent to the mayor and to village clerk. I don't know if there were any others. We were not made aware of any other applications or resumes that were sent in, so we have no way of knowing who has applied. But I know the one individual who did apply was vastly qualified to fill this position. So for that reason, I am objecting to the appointment of Stacy Freed, as wonderful as this individual as she is, to this position. Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. I'd like to just speak to that for a second. And Jeff, maybe you can chime in terms of what the code actually says in terms of the mayor has the it can ask the board to consider the appointment that the mayor would like to make. Am I correct?
The mayor makes the appointment, the board approves.
So, I look at resumes, people contact me, they've all written in, and this is the person that I think would be very excellent and well suited to this particular alternate position on the board. Dan.
So I'm very much in favor of Stacy joining, and I just looked up the post that was made by the village soliciting resumes from people, and it's soliciting for the PZBA, the HPB, the stewardship committee on it, and it is not specific that you do or don't need to be a village resident. It doesn't say either way, so it is effectively a call to one and all.
And also, I think villagers are stakeholders, not only in the village, but villagers are stakeholders in the town. And I also think that townspeople very much consider Pittsford Village their village too. And I think to make an artificial distinction isn't fair to the larger community that loves the village as much as we do. So I appreciate your comments, but I think we have a qualified person before us, and I think she will do an excellent job. Stacy has an excellent reputation within her industry. She has followed the construction industry for decades and knows the language and has that lexicon. And her learning curve is already there. That's one of the reasons why I'm recommending her for approval this evening. Yes, Renee.
This is the same question I always ask, was it advertised? And we just answered that one. And then the second one was, did you already talk to or consult with the PZBA, or at least the chair?
Yes,
Okay, awesome, thank you.
yes, they're very favorably disposed. Yes. So I'll enter, oh, yes, Justin?
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on some of Trustee Lanfear's points. I was also on the planning board when we were looking at the new code, which I think might have made more seats open to town residents. And I think that I had a discussion with the former mayor around that, because I was concerned that it was, I think the sense this government exists for villagers as well as other stakeholders, but villagers have a special place in it. My concern is that, we're opening it up more than we needed to. And the concern that he expressed is that, we just couldn't find enough people in the village to fill these positions. And I thought that was a legitimate concern. So, that's as far as the discussion went. I had a question for our clerk. How many applications have we received for this position? And if she could shed any light on the interest in the position based on our
I
postings.
don't even remember. Oh, you mute.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I don't remember, to be honest. All the resumes and everything I received, I had forwarded on to the mayor. So I know we had different interest in different portions.
Yeah.
As Dan had indicated, some people had interest in the Historic Preservation Board, some into the Stewardship Committee and the PZBA. So I would have to go back and count. I mean, I want to say we received 6 or 7. Does that
Possibly,
sound
yeah.
right?
Yep, I think possibly so. Yes, Renee.
Is she the only, if she's appointed, she's the only one from outside of the village on the
Oh, yeah, there's no
PZBA
one,
right now? Yeah.
everybody, and the other HPB has 3 people now, so from the town. I think we've had wonderful board members from the town and the village, so,
No, about
Yes.
3.
Yes, there's 3.
yes, there's 3.
Who's the third?
You have Bill McBride, you have Jeff Pollock, and the third one is, oh, I'm blanking. Yes, Jeff.
Ginny Searle.
Yeah.
And the
Virginia
distinction,
Searle.
the distinction is,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The distinction is because we're limited to 2 by our,
2 sitting members.
yes, the sitting members. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. I'm sorry, Justin, yes.
Yeah, so just following up on the same
Mhm.
question. So it seems like maybe we've gotten 6 or 7 applications for the position. So we're not necessarily constrained in terms of the number of applications. Do you recall how many of those were villagers versus people outside of the village?
I wanted to speak to something. Dorothea, maybe you could talk about in the past for board positions that came up, prior to my taking office. I'm now going into my 6 months. So maybe the prior administration, how many times things were advertised and the number of resumes that would be received and how they were vetted. How did that work, that process?
0.
This,
Was it
I can answer
advertised?
it. Never.
when it was
not once.
advertised,
Excuse me,
Pam.
Dan, I'm sorry, what you're saying?
when it was advertised, if I received them, I forwarded them on to the mayor.
Mhm.
There wasn't a lot. We've always gotten 1 or 2,
Okay,
tops 3, 4. I mean, it really
Right.
depended what we were advertising and how many we got. We didn't
right.
get very many. And sometimes the mayor solicited people for the positions.
Okay, so it wasn't always advertised.
No,
Okay,
always,
yeah.
it wasn't
Dan?
always advertised.
So this was to the people who are new to the board, this was a huge sticking point. It was never advertised in my almost 4 years on this board. We called for it over and over and over again, and it was never done. So this is a huge step forward, and I applaud Mayor Plummer for undertaking this and making it happen.
It's a good thing. It's all a good thing. Yes, Justin.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for the record that I didn't get an answer to my question, and there was a different question that was asked to divert the topic. I think that I am able to ask questions. And I would like to go into these issues. I think that it's not about comparing our board to the previous board, but it's really about holding up standards that we care about in terms of inclusivity and in terms of finding the right representation on our different boards. So I'm not satisfied with just saying, hey, this is better than what happened. I don't know what happened. I wasn't on the board then. I observed it, and there are some things that I would change and some things that I wouldn't. But really my concern here is just making things better. So I don't have an answer to the question about where the other 6 people came from. I would still like to see that at least as a point of data for the board after this meeting. And I think that we should be able to get that kind of information to understand what our applicant pool is and evaluate our policies accordingly. The other thing that I would like to know is when these applications were received. So can you tell me the date on which Ms. Freed's application was received? And also when were the other applications received?
We'd have to go back, I think.
I would have to go back. They came in various different times. I do not look at addresses when they came in. I forwarded them on to the mayor. So I didn't take time to review the applications because that's not my concern.
Yeah.
My
We're
concern is getting it
involved
to the mayor.
We're
You do
involved in a lot
have,
of different things in the office, so.
correct.
we
Just so you
don't
know,
really
you have
track it that
2
way.
Q&A questions when you're
Yeah.
ready for them.
Yeah, yep, sure. Let's take the Q&A, please.
Did
So
you
I'm
want?
not allowed to continue.
Oh, I'm sorry, your hand was up. I'm
Yep.
sorry, I was looking. at
Yeah,
your-
if I may. So it sounds
Mhm.
like we don't have information about how many people applied. We don't really know exactly when they applied. 2 data points that I do have are that it looked like Peggy Brazee's application was received on August 8th,
Mhm.
and the initial posting on the village website said, please submit the resume to the village clerk by August 9th. So it seems like the date closed. And there wasn't a decision made. Then it says below that on the post, please apply by September 27th. So it seems like we're omitting candidates and just moving on. Now, that's
No,
on the,
actually, we expanded that because we realized people were on vacation. We just thought that it made more sense to take it into September. It was nothing more than that. There was nothing else other than that. I do think, we're kind of, I'm wondering where this is going, because as the mayor, I have the right to look at the resumes and put forth who I feel would be capable serving our village on the committee. And I'm bringing it here now before this board, and I'm asking for a vote tonight on an alternate for the Planning and Zoning Board.
I'll make a motion to approve Stacy Freed.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we're bringing it back for discussion because Justin's hand's up, please.
yeah. So just to clarify, I'm not disputing your ability to put people forward
Mhm.
or to call a motion to appoint somebody to the board. And I'm also not disputing any of Ms. Freed's qualifications. What I'm talking about is the transparency and the openness of this process and the initial premise under which we passed code to open this up to more residents from outside of our municipality. And it seems to me that there are some questions here. And I do think that the board should be able to look at this to make sure that we're being inclusive and to make sure that we are finding the best applicants for our local board. So that's my concern here, just to clarify where I'm coming.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think I appreciate those comments. Jeff, can you remind us of the code again and how this works?
Well, I think you're talking about New York law.
Mhm.
And New York law is that you appoint subject to approval.
Right.
I mean, that's really what it is.
So I'm bringing a candidate forward. That I feel is qualified. You all have, her resume has been posted publicly. You've all had a chance to look at it. You're keenly aware of her qualifications. And it's been called, we're going to call it to a vote. There's been a motion and a second. Yes, Renee.
Just to Justin's point, I think Justin was in attendance to one of the first meetings that I was a trustee. I took issue with the fact that an appointee wasn't advertised and that the planning board hadn't been consulted. So those were my 2 questions, and I want to hold myself to the same standard. The planning board has been consulted and it sounds like they're in agreement. that this is a good candidate. And the second is that this has been advertised. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting additional standards than what I've adhered to before and what I took issue to before. So.
Yep. Yes, Dorothea.
We have public comment.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Dave Ferris has his hand raised. I think he wants to speak, so I'll allow him to talk.
Sure.
Mr. Ferris, you were able to speak?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
Dave, hi.
Yeah, I agree with Dan when I was trustee that these positions were not widely advertised with more word of mouth, but there were multiple candidates on a number of occasions. I also understand that every one of those candidates was interviewed at that time, and then the mayor made his recommendation. So my question is, were these candidates interviewed? I spoke with one person who applied, who's very qualified, former trustee, served in the comp plan committee, involved with Historic Pittsford, very engaged in the village, and I'm questioning why that person was never contacted, I'm told, by that individual. So I would hope there'd be an interview process. And if there was a village candidate equally qualified or better qualified, then that appointment, I think, should be a villager, because zoning directly impacts a villager. If I lived in the south side of Pittsford, I might favor having a Chick-fil-A in the empty restaurant on Main and Church Street. As a villager, I don't think I would, for other reasons. But I think the process should be transparent, and I would think a normal process, you'd interview candidates to see their positions. This is also a second alternate to the PZBA, if I'm correct. It's a new position. There's not an immediate need for an alternate. So this is creating an addition for reasons I'm not clear why. So those are my comments.
First of all, the alternate, the first alternate that's there now, there is allowed to have two alternates anyway, and there always should be, I think, two alternates on boards. We have that on the HPB. And the first alternate has had to recuse himself from some of the projects that are coming before the board. So this is just another way to make sure that we always have another alternate available. And I think that's appropriate. I also would like to say, I appreciate your thoughts about the idea that somebody not living in the village would want a Chick-fil-A or something. The village boards do not create the law, they apply it. And they are charged with applying the code that's before them. They do not make the law, we do. So we know we don't want a Chick-fil-A or whatever, I'm just thinking it's a different process with the boards. But thank you for your comments, Dave. I appreciate that. Dorothy, is there anybody else?
Yes. We have one other person in which is to speak. It will be Mr. Reynolds, and I'll allow him to talk.
Sure.
Mr. Reynolds, you're able to speak. Oh, hold on. I gave him permission and then I took it away.
Oops.
That's the way I am. Okay, Mr. Reynolds, you should be able to speak now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So here's a question. If there's two alternates, 4 members of the board show up, who votes?
I believe it's the first alternate or whatever alternate is there. That's my understanding. It just depends on the project. It's simply a backup person. This is not anything unusual. Every municipality I've ever lived in has had at least 2 alternates on boards. And we already have that with the HPB. Thank you. Anything else? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Renee.
I was just rereading the letter that was sent to us with interest as well. And there's special interest in the newly forming stewardship committee for the Robert C. Arboretum. So I didn't get the sense, I don't know if this individual was interested in PZBA. I got the sense from this that she was most interested in the Arboretum. It's come up a couple times, so I didn't know if we needed to clarify that.
Well, tonight we're looking at the PZBA, but I thank you for the clarification. Yep. Dorothea?
Real quick, I just went back through the resumes we received, and we did receive 11 various dates, and there was only 2 resumes received for PZBA. So there's some data points real quick.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Call the vote.
Okay, trustee Lanfair,
Lanfear, no.
trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
trustee Stetser,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
motion passes.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for the good discussion. Next up, DPW staffing. And I know Dorothea was talking about this a little bit, I think, in the last meeting, and we just wanted to bring this back because we do have positions we need to fill with DPW. And we did express some concerns about the wage rates and trying to be competitive. Because as we all know, it's no secret, the labor market's a little tough. Yeah. Dorothea, did you want to speak to that at a little bit?
No, I think the board is well aware of our starting rate for a person with a not a CDL is $13.75. With a CDL, it goes to, let's see, $14.50. So we are nowhere near competitive at this point. So this is going to be a matter of how do you want to move forward and advertise? Obviously, we'll need a memorandum of understanding with the union as we move forward, and hopefully we don't impact further other employees with trying to fill these positions.
Yep. Oh, Lily, did you want to speak? Oh, I'm sorry. I saw you light up, your screen lit up. Yeah, I feel strongly that we need to raise that wage. I don't think we'll be able to get anybody. At this point, the most minimum is $15. And we did look at other municipalities, the town, Dorothea, I'm not recalling it right now. The starting rate at the town was, I think, $18.50.
Around $18.50, yeah.
And so, if you're looking for a job and you're going to start at $13.75 or $14.50, not so sure that we can attract anybody.
Yeah, we talked about this
Yeah.
before you all were on the board, trying to get it closer up to 15. There were challenges with contracts, but that was our intent to get
Okay.
them up to 15. But let's figure out what the right number is.
Well, maybe rather than, try to kick this around, why don't we, Dorothea, because you were already surveying other towns and other communities, why don't we come back to the board then? The next meeting, we'll circulate it before the meeting, just really what's going on with other communities. And also, I think Dorothea will be able to reach out to other clerks about how successful they are in recruiting at that hourly rate, because I think that's important as well. Are they having any success? Because right now, as you know, we're down a person in DPW and it's a small crew anyway. So, and we also had 2 people out because they had a potential exposure to COVID. So they were out for a couple of days as well. So the crew is really, really just in a tough spot for the last few days. Yes, Dorothea.
I'm just going to propose to the board that we go ahead and get the position out there to get it filled, knowing that the rates that we have established are not going to be appropriate, and we'll, hire based on, qualifications. We've done that in the past, and maybe a memorandum is needed. Given I'm going to be out of the office.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Getting this information to you guys. Not that I don't want to sleep here in the next few nights to obtain that. I just want to get that process started for that department so we can move it along. And then obviously when I get back, and I can also have Marina, when she gets a free moment, start that research to get you the most current rates as to where everybody is paying.
And I'll
if
try to
that's
help
okay.
her with that. Yeah, I'll try to help her with that. You're right. I forgot. Yeah, you do have a vacation coming up.
Believe it or not. No,
I
so if the
know.
board is
Okay.
okay with that,
Yeah. We need to move it along because they're really down a person. So at least just to start advertising. Does that make sense to the board, just as a practical way to
Yeah.
move forward,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that.
no problem.
Okay, so that's our action item there. Next up, Highland Planning. That we, I guess it was a couple of meetings ago, right? We talked about Highland Planning and their app that they have. It's called Instant Input. And it is geared to seeking instant input from your residents on any particular topic. And, you know, of course, what comes to my mind is maybe just even something like cannabis and just doing, you know, quick takes in terms of what people are thinking. They have a number of packages for this program. The one that we were looking at, Dorothea, was minor. It was a sort of a
1 point.
limited use, but maybe would help us understand if this was an effective way to go for our village. I think it was $399.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we're just letting you guys know that we do think it would be a great idea to try with our residents, because it's one more way to really reach out to people and, you know, gauge sort of what the pulse is on certain ideas. Yeah, Lily.
Thank you. Is it based on villagers contacting the village first with their contact information? I mean, how to get started? I mean, what do you use as your?
It's an app you download, and the app is so you can download it on your phone or your tablet. And Dorothea, correct me if I'm wrong about explaining this, but I think so you get the app, and it is interactive to the extent that as our the board can pose questions to the residents. So, and then the residents can plug back into the app and say, oh, yeah, I like that idea. Or, oh, no, not so much. Or I'm thinking about this. So it's interactive. It's called instant input for that reason. But the direction, my understand, comes from what we would like to hear from our public. And of course, the public, there may be also an additional way for them to give other comments, but we already have that. People can write in, call in, emails, all of that as in addition. So this is specific. It's a polling mechanism is really
Right.
my understanding. Yeah.
I guess my question is how do we know that they're village residents?
They have a mechanism to do that.
Right. I think they have to register for the use.
Yeah,
That's
they
what I'm
register-
asking. Somebody would have to, you would have to
Oh, yeah.
offer your information so that you could verify that you actually.
That you're within the village limits.
Yes, or not somebody who lives even in Pennsylvania, you know, I mean.
Right.
Yeah.
You had
okay.
Peoria
Yeah.
phoning in, right?
No, they limit that. They control that. They
Yeah,
have to
they
register.
have a certain, it's part of how they set up the application. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, you know. I think it'd be kind of a great thing at least to try.
Try, yeah.
Yeah, so, and then, you know, Jeff, I know is going to be looking at the contract, and there was a couple of things that he had questions about that he's going to be working on with them, you know, just as we move forward. Yeah, Justin.
So I did, so we're still talking about instant input, right?
Mhm.
There's another one mentioned. I just wanted to make sure. I did look over the application briefly. I signed up for an account. I logged in. I looked at the reviews in the App Store. It looks like they only had one person commenting on iOS in the App Store. It does not have a lot of market adoption. It seems like they only have 2 municipalities using it, the Village of Watkins Glen and Niagara Falls. In those 2 places, I think I was actually able to go in and maybe comment on threads in Watkins Glen. I was actually able to pull the comment box up. I didn't comment because I didn't want to interfere there, but it doesn't necessarily look as restricted as it seems like it might be from
Oh.
registration. So it seems low usage. It seems like it's not as closed or particular as we think it might be. There were also weird bugs. It rejected my 18 character random password and said that it had to be 6 characters or something. So there are some rough edges still, and it seems like a new application. So I think that, you know, it seems like the quote is $6,000 or something.
No, it's 399.
Okay, there was a 6,000 figure.
Oh, yeah, that's for this whole big package. And, you know, I don't think that's, but, you know,
Okay.
I so appreciate you going in and evaluating the software. That would have been helpful for you to, you know, float that back to the board, you know, even prior to this
I am.
meeting, so we could get the questions back to them, because you're really raising some really good points.
Well, thank you. If I might just continue too. So I thought the cost was $6,000. I'm glad that it's not $6,000.
No.
I think that, you know, based on is it $300 per month then? Is that the plan, or what's the?
One time.
It's a one time. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. That doesn't seem as bad, but I think that, you know, given that it really is just starting out, I'm not sure if Watkins Glen and Niagara Falls both paid for this. It might be something where, you know, if we really did pick up on this, since it seems like a new application, maybe they would do it for free or something.
Yeah, no, good point. Would you be able to just shoot the bullets of what you just said to me and Dorothea so we can get back with them?
Sure. Yeah. I think
That
I've
would
got
be
some
great.
bullet points on it.
And may we include you in a conversation potentially with them when we reach back, reach back to them? Because you've evaluated this a bit.
I can probably make myself available for
Oh, that
a
would be
call with
great.
them.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for that. Yeah, Dan.
Just to go further on what Justin was saying, in general, I don't like being one of the first people on a platform.
Mhm.
So I would be much more in favor of letting it ripen some and then evaluating it, especially if there's a cost. It's one thing if you're a beta program and you
Yeah,
can
beta
test it
testing,
and that's
exactly.
fine.
Yeah.
But at a cost and not a mature product, I'd be much more in favor of waiting a bit and letting it.
Yeah,
letting
they told us
iron-
about more municipalities than just those two, but I think you're really raising solid points, both of you. Thank you. Renee, you're familiar also with their work. Do you have any comments on them?
I don't have an opinion on this software. I work with Highland Planning and they come very recommended. They're a great team. Their whole philosophy and approach to public engagement is fantastic, but I have no knowledge of this. I don't have experience with this particular software.
Okay, but you feel it's a strong team anyway, and maybe
The team is, yeah.
Okay, no, that's good to know. I think that's just helpful. So we kind of shape a picture on that. Okay, then I think you've really raised good points. So let's, circle back with them and kind of see if it's going to be worth it. If they really are just a few municipalities. For some reason, I thought that they had more municipalities when they did the presentation, but all good points. So we'll follow up on that. Okay, that's it for our items. We're into member items. Oh, yes, Jeff.
You want me to hang around for this? For the member items?
No, you've had a long day.
No, not as long as you guys are having.
Unless
So-
if there's something you need Jeff here for, if there's something you want to discuss.
No,
with
I
him.
just remind you about the clear cutting, that's
Yeah.
on the horizon.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, we mentioned that, right in the beginning, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. All
Great.
right, everybody have a good night.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Good night, Jeff.
All right, take care
Bye-bye.
now. Okay, member items? Anybody have a little something? Yep, Lily. Oh, Lily. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Mine is very brief, and that is that after 7 months of many notes and emails, I believe we have a valid permit to install our first bench, village bench
Hooray!
on State
Yay!
Street. I plan a party at the bench when it goes in.
You took on Nice Dot, Lily. That's
yeah, well,
impressive.
Yes, it's my new child. I adopted him. In any case, yes, it should be going in at the end of the week. So very excited about that. And that was the Women's Club donation. So that's my member item.
Oh, that's great. And thanks for honchoing that because, let's face it, you're dealing with a dinosaur.
Yeah.
So
true.
That's great. Yeah, well done. Thank you. Okay, any other member items here? Oh, yes, Justin?
Just two quick ones. So as liaison to the PZBA, I did go to the last meeting. There were a lot of issues, starting out with the Zoom bombing. That was pretty uncomfortable, I understand. I came in just after the workshop when that occurred. The entire meeting was almost canceled. And thanks to Dorothea, I know that she was out of the conference. I appreciate her help in getting things back on track. And Trustee Keating came in and helped out as well. So the meeting did proceed. But there were some people who were unhappy with how it rolled out. And so I just wanted to bring that back to this board to discuss that, not to place any blame, but just as kind of a postmortem and, to make sure that we're aware of that issue. I guess personally, my take would be that, I really think that there should be a staff member present for critical meetings. I don't think that, for me at least, I would tend to think that elected officials shouldn't be doing the tech setup and stuff like that when there's a critical meeting on the line. So that would be my takeaway. Certainly there could be other proposals, but just my 2 cents. I did have one other item, but it looks like Dan wants to chime in too. So
yes, Dan.
Yeah. So real quick on that. It was an exception because the staff was at NICOM I've also done it literally, I literally do it 5 times a day in all kinds of different environments. So I was happy to help. Now, as for the Zoom bombing, really the best solution to that is to have a waiting room, and then a moderator has to let people in or not, and that would solve that problem right away. So that's something we should consider, and maybe even test it, see how it would work.
Great idea. Yeah, I've been in so many meetings where you're in the waiting room and then you're let in. You're sort of vetted, really. Yeah, that's a great idea. And I know that was a security breach from, yeah, Dorothea.
Real quick, we're moving all the meetings to the webinar format. That was done in a meeting format. And I think we have far more security in the webinar format and controlling those things because the screen shares and different things. So I've already talked to Marina and we're going to be setting that all up. So she'll be able to set those up because it was cheaper just to allow me to do it. And unfortunately that meeting got set up in that platform. So I think that'll help immensely. And again, it was bad timing all the way around for what had happened. So I do apologize. We'll take steps and correct whatever happened.
I appreciate that. I already noticed the next meeting for the PZBA, I think tomorrow, is sent out with the webinar format. So it seems like that problem was addressed. Thank you, Dorothea, for being on top of that. I think that'll take care of the security issue that we have with the Zoom bombing as well. So we can talk about next time if the whole staff is out, what to do to proceed. But I appreciate everybody jumping in to fix the problems at the last meeting. The other item that I had was just a quick follow-up on Shane Place. 2 things on that. First of all, one resident did reach out to me. I just wanted to bring it to the board. She had seen an incident where a child was tearing branches off a tree or something. And her concern was that the child may have been left unattended and was causing damage to the trees. So the thought was, well, maybe a sign up or something about unattended children in Shane Place would mitigate that kind of issue and also mitigate a possible safety issue with the water. I don't know how to deal with that. I just wanted to bring it back to the board in case there are any thoughts. The other issue in Shane Place is with the barriers. I understand there's been some recent motion on that. I know that erosion doesn't happen overnight. It's been an issue that's been building up for many years probably. I just want to make sure that this board is doing whatever we can to make sure that the barriers are removed in a timely manner. So again, not pointing any blame, just trying to make sure that we're following up. Trustee Keating is always good with action items and project managing this. So I want to try to make sure that we're doing the same in this case.
I think we're all in agreement about the barriers. We would want them taken down as soon as possible. Right before I left for the NICOM conference, and I think I did share this also with a resident that wrote me as well, and I think I copied you all in on it, but just for people that are listening tonight, the Western Region regional engineer for Canal Corporation has escalated the erosion issue, and they got back in touch with me just as I was leaving for NICOM. And my intention is, and I told them I was leaving, for a conference. They said, well, let's follow up later on this week. So I'm hoping that we'll get some additional information. Where is this going? What is your action item, in terms of the engineering plan to stabilize that embankment? We also potentially have an opportunity, and this is where the director of Canal Corporation reached out to me to get some funding potentially to do more than just simply throw rocks on and stabilize that embankment, and maybe take a look at really stabilizing it in a way where we have a wider canal path and a safer canal path, and also more opportunities for docking. So that is a possibility. So those are the things that's as much as I know, and hopefully we'll have more information by the end of this week. Yeah, I'm with you. I don't like the barriers either. Yep. Any other member items? Yes, Renee.
We have an upcoming, we just found out, and it's going to be posted on our website. NISDOT set up a public information meeting, which will be via WebEx, which is the platform they use, to put out information about the North Main Street deck replacement. So I know that the staff's going to get that up on our website, but I wanted to let you all know that that was coming up. It's going to be on October 14th from 5 to 6, again, online. And then the second thing is the mayor and I are meeting tomorrow to get back to NISDOT about one of the locations where they're going to be putting a pedestrian or a mountable median and on North Main Street, right in front of the Del Monte. And I know the emergency services had some concerns. And back in 2018, a consensus was already reached. And so we just need to make sure we put together all the pieces for that to make sure that we get our median in place rather than having a flush mounted median or a flush median. We want to make sure it's the raised median that allows the emergency services to go up on the curb pretty easily, but we have to make some modifications. So I just wanted to keep everyone in the loop there.
Great, thank you. Yes, Dan.
So I have two quick member items. The first is what I claim at every meeting, that I'm very much in favor of direct negotiation and rolling up our sleeves and getting 75 Monroe done or closed or something. I was a little dismayed from being at some of the sub-board meetings at what I perceive to be a pretty severe bias at the beginning. And I just hope that people retain an open mind. And that's all that I ask for, is that they have an open mind and do the work. So no need to say anything more than that, because we're not allowed to exert influence, and I'm not trying to. I'm just asking that people have an open mind and roll up their sleeves and do the work. Secondly, I would call on my fellow trustees to give us updates on their engagements with the subboards. So we're all liaisons on various boards. I know Renee is really good about sending things about her meetings on NISDOT and those kinds of things. And also around the police, I try to send meeting notes about what happened at each of the Chamber of Commerce meetings, since I'm the liaison there. So I'm really looking for the liaisons for the other subboards, particularly the PZBA and the HPB, to give us updates on what's going on those boards. So we can't attend all of these meetings, and I would love some more information from you in a regular basis. So that's what I'm asking for there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Lily, was your hand up?
No, it's all right. I
No,
just
go
had a
ahead.
question. I meant to ask it earlier. Several months ago, I believe you and Renee were meeting with a security company. And we never did hear back, or at least I didn't. Maybe I missed that meeting where you reported back to the board of what you discovered and what you had determined to do as a village as far as security. We talked about cameras. We talked about, I thought maybe the ring thing, but Dorothea looked into a more complicated situation with a local company for security cameras and so forth. What was the result of that? And we were given a quote.
Renee?
That was with the sheriff's department came through and did whatever that, Dorothea will know more about this, but they do an assessment. I wasn't part of the doorbells or the Ring doorbells. I only know that the sheriff came over, and Dorothea did ask for an assessment about the security of the perimeter.
And didn't they fix the panic button that went to nowhere?
Okay.
Or something?
Let's see if we can answer these all at one time. I did speak to the sheriff about having someone come in. They have not done that yet. But while the sheriff was here, we tested our button in-house, our panic button at the counter, and it didn't work. Lo and behold, we found out there's a battery in there, and no one was aware, and we weren't aware where it went and who it notified. Since then, we have had it fixed, and it is working appropriately. So the panic button is working. The problem with the panic button, it's located at the counter. I'm going to assume most troublesome problems that could happen in the village hall are going to be at the counter. So we have to go towards danger. So what we do need to look at some point is placing buttons in different locations. I'm hoping when we have the sheriff come through, he can make recommendations, because I feel even in the village boardroom, you should have a panic button, because anything can happen at a meeting. I'm not saying it will, but we should be able to call for help. So.
Well, we
ending
had
that-
budgeted, right, Dorothea?
Yes, and I'm going right there next. We budgeted for a security system. We
Yeah.
looked at it and trying to incorporate it and keep the historical nature of our business being building and not too much. There's a lot of hoops to jump to bring in the more expensive
Oh.
thing. We did add a security system. We added Blink. So.
Oh, okay.
So.
And it's
yes,
at
we have-
DPW as well, right?
Right, and we were able, for the cost that we had budgeted, we added cameras at DPW and we have cameras at Village Hall currently.
Oh, you
And
do?
they-
Okay. I
Yep,
didn't realize
and they're.
that occurred.
work-
Okay.
And they are working and it was well under budget. We're not experiencing any problems with them. I've had a few dancing squirrels, raccoons.
Oh, yeah.
I think I even saw a fox the other day. So they are
Super.
working.
Okay. I didn't know
I-
that they had even been installed. I just
Yeah,
remembered.
I'm sorry, they've been on the bill from when we ordered them. And we've been messing with them. It's only been very recent that they've been up. So
Okay.
it's surprising the number of people that come by Village Hall during the weekend and everything so far. And it has pointed out, we are very active. So I have over 4,000 videos from 2 weeks. So if someone's really
Wow.
bored,
And
yeah,
DPW gets a lot.
they get a lot of traffic down there,
There's
and
a lot
that is
going
a
on down
security
there.
issue we are looking at as well. So
Yeah.
those
Okay.
are working. We're comfortable with them. They seem to be doing the job that we needed for a little bit of extra eyes on things around the hall.
Yes,
So-
and a cost saving, so.
Yeah, it
thanks
was a
for that.
cost savings.
Yeah.
So is there any other questions on all that, or did I get it all?
No, that's good because it was something was on the wish list for a long time.
Yes, it was. It's important to know what's
Yes.
going on with the building. And, I like, not that I jump every time the ring bling goes off, but, it's interesting to go back and say, what was happening at 2 AM at Village Hall?
Mhm.
And
Yes, I think it'd be good. Yeah, exactly.
so that is the purpose. So we have a record,
Mhm.
So there you go.
Wonderful.
Great. I have a couple, you're good? Okay.
I'm.
I have a
that's good.
couple of items quickly. And this is a call that I had received again right before I left for NICOM from, I guess it's the government liaison person. There are going to be inspections starting this week of the canal, of the embankments and of the locks. So they're going to be down at Bushnell's Basin and then coming up just outside of our village. They said this is in no way any assessment of clear cutting or anything to do with it. This is a sort of a mandatory inspection that they're required to do every few years. So we will probably post that tomorrow just so people don't, become unnerved by inspectors going up and down the canal. The other thing is NISTOD is going to be starting probably within the next couple of weeks. They couldn't give us a very firm date. The active transportation plan component of where we have the bump outs on the corner of Church and South Main, and also the bump out opposite that turn. We're doing a bump out there. That's part of our active transportation plan to calm traffic, and then also to relocate that crosswalk, which is actually in front of where Blades was, and then kind of ends in the driveway that goes into the Breathe parking lot. So it's a great thing. They're ramped up and they're ready to do it. And this will be another safety measure that will be put in place from our active transportation plan. Renee, is there anything you wanted to add to that? I mean, that's kind of where we are. As soon, if we get a firm date, I'll let you guys know and we'll post it. They just said, oh, it's going to be within the next couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll get something firmed up, because obviously it's a fairly extensive project because they are relocating the crosswalk. So, things will be slowed down a little bit, for that project with traffic and everything. So, yeah, those are my two items. Anything else? Oh, yep, Steve. Steve, you're with us. Yes, hi.
I'm just curious, I know we talked in the last meeting about the code update, if any action's been taken on that or where we stand on it, just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, don't forget, we were all out of town last week.
Yep, I
So,
know.
you know, and today's Tuesday, so we're just getting back in the groove. So we're following up this week and the boards are going to come up with 2 people. So all good.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know. We have a lot to do there. All set. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I think,
Okay.
Lily, second.
okay, trustee Lampier,
Aye.
trustee Stetser,
Aye.
trustee Keating,
Aye.
trustee Lightgib,
Aye.
Mayor Plummer,
Aye.
Bye,
motion
everybody.
Okay,
passes.
thanks.
Good night to
everybody.
all.
Woo!
Thanks, everybody, for attending. Have a
Yes.
good evening.
I'll
Bye.
see you in about 3 weeks or 4. Bye.